Wholeness.
Yes, give thanks.
Hello, Sevan. Hello there again.
Hey, what's going on? I actually been watching in the studio. I did kind of want to get my, my mics because I might be just blasting out right now. I was actually listening. You guys are just funny over there. I love the.
Is it the funny Brit accent?
well, no. It's actually just how things roll into each other. How you two are going back and forth with it, and it's just beautiful. I just love to hear
it's
it.
It's always like this, Sevan. Let me tell you.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you had that word in America, but we call it banter.
Yeah.
Oh man, no, they don't.
I don't know how to explain it, but we have banter.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain that word, but yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes she comes up a bit too cheeky, though. You get me?
Yeah, I know what cheeky is. I am in the loop. Yeah. I just mentioned, some of that new stuff y'all inventing. Though you gotta wait. Y'all gotta wait for it to get around the world a little bit.
I had a friend who lived sort of up north in England, and I asked. She used to listen to gangster rap, and I was like, do they have gangster rap up north? And because for me, I imagine up north to be a bunch of farmers and stuff.
Right. Oh, they got it.
I do. It's just my ignorance.
Yeah, they make sure they get it to them.
Or your innocence.
My innocence, yeah.
Bless her. She's only 27, so Wow.
That's great. I mean, I always say the glass is.
How's things over there?
Everything's excellent. The weather, the sky is clear. Everything is beautiful here in Costa Rica, as always. It's very tropical, so it takes a lot of craziness to penetrate all of this green over here, and most of the time it just doesn't happen. You can see these huge volcanoes, and there's at least about 4 of them. You can see them out in the distance, and they're chilling. So you can imagine if they just start moving a little bit, then it's all over here. But for years and years, this country's really got that harmonic thing going on. So you kind of inherit that when you get here.
Yeah. That's nice.
Making me feel jealous.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry, you got the Blarney.
Yeah, we've got our hot cups of ginger tea here in the cold in England. In fact, it's not that cold today, is it?
It's
been.
Quite mild, but it's still not what. It's not.
It's not Costa Rica, is it?
Right.
Sorry today.
Yeah.
So today, Sevan, you're gonna bless the audience with your experiences of lucid dreaming and how people can really activate their lucid dreams. Is that right?
Oh yeah, I definitely have a really nice show lined up for everyone. I did luckily just do a show about 3 weeks ago, which was the top 10 ways to raise your vibration. So, it really ties kind of right into that. So there was at least a nice body of work that I already had completed on the topic. And so I was just able to hone in on, what's kind of going on in our reality right now that we need to work on and what we need to be aware of, and then how to hone in on certain areas where, we're vulnerable that's affecting lucid sleeping and affecting activation and, all of the above.
So what sort of things are affecting people not to be able to do these things?
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. That's a vast question. I definitely have it lined up. I wanted to do one thing before though, because I know someone. Because of course this is going to be, I guess, at least 2 hours. We talked about possibly taking it into the 3rd hour if it gets into that. I did want to do a sound test for those people, because I saw them in the chat box. Somebody was saying that your mic on your end, and they love to hear you. That your mic on your end may have been a little low. I'm not sure, but I just want to make sure that they can actually, hear that other side of things. Because, of course, the guest can only be as good as the host and co-host.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
so we need to do another check then, don't we, from this end?
I was logged in. I logged out so that I didn't get the reverb, but I was in the login. I was in the chat box on the Ustream, and I was listening, and it did just sound a little bit low on your end, and that's why it was a little hard to hear you over the music when you were talking. But this is just, I love this stuff because it's that's when it's grassroots and when it's gonna grow into something. My sound stuff be just crazy. I might just cut off in the middle of a major interview or something like that. But that's what lets them know. It's look, man, I'm dealing with, I'm in Gaza right now. What? This whole network might get shut down like Syria if while you're playing around. So Let's, for the caliber of what we're talking about, because, realistically, just to be able to broadcast into the UK with this message, and trust me, to get to who it needs to get to, it's amazing because you actually see a lot of the promises. That's like, if you're focusing so much on a negative thing, it's very difficult to see a lot of the promises about, truth shining forward and riding forward. Like, they always put these horses, this black horse and white horse, something stronger than a horse basically running through is truth, and making it to all lands and knocking down a great deal of the barriers that are set up in those countries and in those places that keep people from having the truth. Because remember, you're in the kingdom, and most people are in the united, or unitus, as they love to call it. Yeah. So the rest of the world, though, is in a blanket of, hey, we let you see what you want, we want you to see, and if you start looking at things that are a little too questioning, we're going to bring you in anyway. And that's the kind of countries they live in, and we're not familiar with that because, of course, we've been raised in other places where they just watch in a different kind of way. They don't let you know they're there. They're spies, basically, as far as how they get the information. You don't got to see them, but they see you. So that's the difference. And so now we see in many of the countries that have had a blanketing of the popular, the blanketing of their communication go on. It's now, again, just amazing to be able to use a method to get messages to people that are really going to impact what they do.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
And so that's really where we're at today. So we're right at the control point. Just so everyone knows, this means that we're really going to only talk about things that are applicable now that you can actually do to get back in control of your body. Of course, there will be some things that are, it's the depth level conversation, meaning it's like adult conversation for a child at times, the higher levels of spirituality and what really goes on there. So do get yourself prepared for that. I always recommend taking some breaths. We do give wholeness, meaning that we don't just tell one side of the story, we tell the whole side. That way, nobody feels like they didn't get represented properly. I personally try to stay as non-dualistic as possible, I will tell everyone, but it's a little difficult, especially when you have innocence being damaged all the time, and you can always see that if something remains pure and pristine and it runs very well, the potential of it is endless, versus if it becomes damaged and destroyed and on tilt or on wobble or off balance, etc., then it's a very rigorous, dangerous life and a dangerous person that you're dealing with. You see what I mean? So what I'm saying is that I prefer personally, for me and my stance, is that we could do a lot better with how we're handling this world. We can utilize certain techniques and certain abilities that have been given to us and certain tools that have been given to us since time memorial to expand our consciousness in the sky and beyond the sky, inside, etc. Basically, more spaces than just the ground. The human has to realize, as a whole, we remain on the ground most of the time. Nobody has one of those Lear jets in the backyard. So the reality is that most of the time we walk around, we ride around on wheels, and that says a lot about our dimension, our dimensionality. Of course, we're seen as three-dimensional beings, and then there's supposed to be another spatial. You have to gain another spatial to become, quote unquote, a fourth dimensional being. So that, of course, gets us into lucid dreaming, because it actually lays out for you what is fourth dimension. Of course, the reality with dimensions is that anytime you get it above 3D, and it would become invisible to the third dimensional eye. You would need to use a different eye in your dreams. And so, of course, these eyes are really what they call chakras, or the wheels that are in your body that give you a plethora of things. Like, we couldn't even limit what could be brought forth from chakras, because what they really are coiled information. And that's why they're related to Kundalini. Sometimes they're called the past. That's why they're related to the soul and the netherworld. And sometimes there's even a dark connotation around Kundalini, because it carries the biorhythm of even our primordial natures. So this is how we're comprised. So of course we're in this magnificent vehicle. Vehicles actually within vehicles, the real UFO. But we don't really know how to control it. So this serves to become more or less a prison for us when we can't enter and exit our vehicle. And of course this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the separate vehicles that you do have as a mind, body, and soul. We're going to talk about how there's always a vying to change your frequency. Everything wants to change your frequency. Everywhere you go, someone may just say something crazy to you, bam, frequency change for you. So very seldom do most humans stay harmonic. And this is a part of the problem, meaning that no matter what's going on around them, they have a personal consciousness and level of thinking that, look, I got to keep my frequency harmonic, because if they upset me, then this whole thing may blow. Meaning that when you start carrying a large amount of energy, you can't just get thrown off all of a sudden of your energy, or you'll destroy something. So now we're going to talk about when you do finally get energy and power, which I think that's something that humanity has a destiny with. It's not something that they can actually avoid. We will come into full realization of self. The whole thing is to be prepared for full realization of self, because obviously that's different than what we are doing now.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things that we should think about, is that, okay, if there is this awakening, quote unquote, so we're saying actually that we're not awake, then obviously this would contain everything that we're not experiencing here. What would that be like? And how well would I transition into that level properly? So these are the things that have to be thought about when your body starts to turn on energy, because it's very similar to a car. Once it gets to a certain point, you can't really cut it off. And you start feeling an oscillation within the body, and it starts to basically cut on. And then, of course, what happens to individuals, and I'm going to talk about in this conversation today, of course, about different individuals who've activated, quote unquote, using different methods, and how the choice of how you activate does definitely govern how your activation becomes after that. Like, people think of sometimes the activation is the last thing. Well, actually, the activation is the first thing. After that, everything would be a lot more liver than it would be now. So in retrospect, it's like us looking at this on a mature level is going to give us the greatest level of benefit, because it's going to actually allow us to believe that it's real. That's the only thing sometimes that governs us being able to accept something one way or another, is if we can apply it. Like, can I use it now? Can I start doing this and start getting results? And then, many things after that. So let's get right into this. First of all, we have to ask ourselves, why would lucid dreaming be beneficial? And my response to that would be, especially as a lucid dreamer, I started lucid dreaming about 6 to 7 years ago, really heavy. I was going through a stage of purification, and I was able to enter the lucid plane at least 4 times a week. And I was also had the time and the ability to keep a journal about everything, all the happenings there, for better lack of words. So what you're dealing with is that you have to realize that every day you have this magnificent dream, and you're controlling it. And in these dreams, you're building up large amounts of frequency. When you're flying and when you're jumping off of something, you feel the feeling in your stomach and you're alive. You definitely don't be thinking about sleeping in the dream. How many times have you ever said in your dream, I'm sleepy? It very seldom happens. It happens though, but very seldom, because the dream plane is like you're fully awake. The actually the mental body, we'll get into the explanation of these later. The mental body is in full swing now. It doesn't have the physical body to hinder it. The physical body is asleep, snoring. So what happens is, in this lucid dreaming plane, if you can constantly interact with other things that make you feel like you're expanding, which is basically the direction of your intention and where your mind is going, every day you wake up, you're carrying, which I call a bleed through. You're carrying this frequency into this dimension. And so it only takes a certain period of time of that before your actual physical reality starts to metamorphosize into a counterpart of your dream. So this, of course, is for the controllers, the danger with dreaming, because if you start building too much and doing too much, then you'll start bringing that into this dimension, and then the end of their show, basically. So, of course, I will tell everyone at the beginning of this conversation, it's not something that they can prevent. They're fully aware now that you're going to become fully aware. Generally now it's just they're gambling that they've messed up everyone's DNA enough for them not to go for the great arcanum, for them not to go for the prize, for them not to go for the panuncia, meaning that the truth to everything is laid bare. You can find it if you look for it. If you apply it, it will actually expand you into the innerverse. It's a whole different thing. It's pure perpetual energy, no drag, literally. So what happens is that that's the end of their show from a level also of just like a Hollywood star. If you can imagine, if you want to get the idea of what the controllers are like, it's just like an actor or a star that doesn't want to get unpopular. So they'll do anything. They'll dance any old kind of way. They'll keep up all sorts of ruckus and chaos and cymbal, which is the things you play with the drums, just to make you look their way. So let us keep that in mind, that through this conversation, remember, all of what you need is inside of you. The only thing that we've actually discovered is more ways to fix some of the problems that we created when going outside. I'll say that. Most of what we're talking about today is to repair things that you've done in your past on the physical plane. A human being, and even beyond that, just bought into a pure organic field can do what I'm talking about today without any of my conversation. I also want that to be clear. I don't want these remedies and even me myself to be looked up to as if it's some type of God or cure to something. The cure is actually inside. So I also want to say, okay, again, with the lucid dreaming plane, first off, it's really about projection. Yes, you'll be able to sometimes control a dream. Even today after this conversation, some people will control 1 or 2 dreams, probably even tonight or tomorrow. And it's because it's fresh on the mind. It's something that the person is actually putting attention to, and some people never even heard that they can actually do that. So it's something that generally occurs just by someone mentioning it. So that's not the lucid dreaming that we're talking about. We even have levels of lucid dreaming if you look at the pulse on the resistance. So a full lucid dreamer is someone who can enter at least 4 times a week and can even pick up from where they left off. There's more to it than just getting there one time and just being able to move around, and then you see a person you like or a girl or something like that, and then that's the end of the lucid dream. So what happens is that we have to see what is there really, like what should we be going there to explore. And of course, just like in the movie The Matrix, when you've seen the loading room of where they could bring up anything, that's the lucid dream. It is, to me, because I've now identified the difference between the soul and the mental body, it to me is more associated with the mental body, and this is why. If you watch a movie and that movie really gets into your mind and you go to sleep, either that day or 2 or 3 days later, you'll have a dream associated and all mixed up with certain scenes in the movie. Okay? This is because obviously that movie has entered the mental body. So this also denotes the difference between a lucid dreamer and one who has visions. Because what visions are is totally different. With visions, you generally feel a sensation within your soul. Sometimes a lifting and a rising from your soul, a escape of breath from your mouth. And then that vision that you get and what you see, which sometimes they look similar to a dream though, is what we're calling a vision. And the reason why this is important to denote is because the soul is what has visions. With the soul, because of its netherworld connections, its ancient connections, the soul and its connection to the sun, its connection to basically all of ancestry, the all-spark itself, this thing's got tons of history and tons of things that can be unpacked. And it's generally sealed and locked and all of certain things within a person so they don't go into total realization. But the soul is containing an immense amount of information, different than the mental body, mental fields, and astral planes. So again, now let's go back to, the lucid dreaming. Now, the lucid dreaming taking place on what they call the astral plane, where they say that Akashic records are located. The Akashic records are very similar to what you see on Final Fantasy with this all-pervading energy of information that is out there, because it's basically on a magnetic strip. What you're seeing with all of our information is located on magnetic disks, and this is something so important because our entire body is just a magnetic field. The physical body is a magnetic field and is porous. That's why you have pores, because there's holes in it. And so what happens is only if your physical body becomes your primary vehicle. See, listen to what I'm saying. Only if your physical body becomes your primary vehicle do you feel like you're in 3D. So this means that the reason why we use this body primarily is because we've been encouraged to use this one more than we use our other ones. So this means that every day you do spend more time with food and with water and with work and with all this stuff in the physical body and counting on the physical body to get you in and out of things, then you're using your spirit body to do that. Now, of course, in all the ancient teachings, this was like foolishness because the spirit body was so much more faster at handling things for you. So basically, if you could really see the ancestral earth, it was wrapped up to be a paradise in the beginning because you could create things on the astral plane and then come into the physical reality and be dealing with the time delay of what you created. So basically, if you never served up anything for yourself that was going to end up causing your destruction, then you would never die. See, people are acting like that they can determine what these fields are about just by what we're experiencing in this world, but you can't. You have to do it with your imagination. Your imagination is the only thing that can stretch far enough to actually create the rest of the fields that are necessary to fully benefit off of lucid dreaming. Because in those fields, you'll basically find perfect harmony. So we have to now get into why you want to be harmonic, why you want to play in a harmonic orchestra, and how can you do that. Now, of course, in our body, we have these organs. An organ, of course, is even an instrument in the English language because each of our organs in our bodies actually play a tone or a vibration and a frequency. And that tone, vibration, frequency has everything to do with how we feel, even what we look like, what we perceive to be true, etc. The list goes on and on. Basically, everything that has to do with you here on the physical reality is within the tone and vibration. And your control over the ones that belong to you, not everyone else's, but your own organs govern your abilities here in this world. If you go to ancient Tibet, you'll find that they know how to control the fluids within their body and the organs just like you know how to go and pee. When you go sit down and you give your thought to your mind and say pee, then the fluid comes out. They know how to do that with all of the serotonin, melatonin, and things in their body, not just their pee. So when they say, oh, I need an instant boost of serotonin, they think the feeling and it goes into and gives the body the command. Remember, the body is, again, in this case, a vehicle or a ship or a UFO. It is given the command to what it should do. So I want also everyone to see this as a reward system, not a punishment system. I really don't want to deliver today the doom and gloom message about if we don't get this right this time in humanity's immortal life. It's like, okay, so we'll try it again. The reality is I really want this to be a reward system because they show the reward system works a lot better. The punishment system is like, if you don't get this right, then you're going to all die. That's, okay, well, shoot, if I can't get it right, then I guess I'm doomed. You left me nothing. But what about the reward system? The reward system is that I can tell you the truth from my own experiences, not everyone else's, that the body can activate to a certain degree that you feel as if whatever they were talking about with Krishna and Messiah and all of that, that you're it. And it's vivid. It's not even a conceited ego thing. You realize as you're almost terrified by the energy that, whoa, this level is immense. This level of energy. Where does it come from? How can it be harnessed by the body is my question, since I had already experienced that. How can one stay in that stage perpetually? Because of course it has a lot to do with magnetics. It doesn't have to do with the same energy system that you use when you go and run down the block. Like basically you go run down the block, then you're tired. So of course, any type of energy system you're running on, you go into a high vibration all of a sudden and then...
Seven, you're cutting off.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah,
Let me switch mics real quick. Let me see it. Okay,
it's
I'm going to use this mic. How is that mic any better?
Oh yeah, that's better.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, let's use this mic. I think I had some...
that's better.
I think I had with that other mic some little situations. It was making some noises and stuff.
Yeah, it's perfect now.
Yes.
Okay, I think it's too much frequency going on in the room for a wireless mic. Okay, so yeah, where was I now? I did also say, I'm not sure if you got my email, that we do have to probably reset the servers every 45 minutes just so that we can clear them up. But so yeah, I guess we can keep going with this if someone can tell me exactly where I was.
What you was around the point of so
You were talking about like
the frequencies and being at a certain frequency, and if basically people are not ready, they may have to do it. Well, they'll ultimately die and so forth.
Okay. Don't worry if you if you get a little lost sometimes. And I'm talking so fast. I'm going through several subjects at one time. It seems to definitely all flow while I'm talking. But if we have to recall what was the last statement that was made, it's sometimes a little difficult. But I do have notes here. But what I'm getting to here is that obviously you can see that when you enter into lucid sleep and enter into astral planes, and you're dealing with that nature, it's definitely more expanded. So what more expanded means is definitely things that you don't really know about. Now, a lot of us are feeling really cornered in this reality, especially as far as how much space we're getting and how much we're really allowed to expand. That's the major thing. Of course, there's a hierarchy here already that seeks for us to expand in the way that they've set up, which is basically Martian. It runs on martial and maritime law. And that's it. So either we get with the Martians by way of Draconians, or we figure out how to create our own worlds. That's pretty much what it's coming down to. It's not like that you're going to die and they would love you in their system. But so the reality is that if you don't feel like working in their system by one way or another, whether you know it or not, then you need to learn how to create your own worlds. Because it's almost like, In this, I think that what happens is it's very similar to what happens when a baby enters the world, and then the baby gets old enough to where it can start to do things on its own, and then it's encouraged to do as such. Sometimes we look at this universe and we say, well, where's our parents? The parents already gave the gift of life, which was they put you here. They can continuously put you here, meaning the universe has an ability to continuously put life forms on different planets. So it's already doing what it's supposed to do. If we've reached a level of sentience where we can actually gain some type of bearing on what we're experiencing, and we can even try to guide ourselves through it like a surfer would through heavy waves, oh my goodness, now this has even gotten interesting. See, most of life is always at the realm of the universe, where the decisions that the universe wants to make controls whether those birds or those crocodiles and those things of that nature are going to live this time. But humans have even transcended to a level where they've been given this choice thing where you can even decide not to go to sleep, to stay awake. You can do all of these things. And that's, again, what's so magical about us. And that's why I believe that 100% we're at the beginning of our expansion. So still see that there's a responsibility that's gained when creating worlds. This is the same thing when going into lucid planes. Like, you have to still not be immature with what you're doing in there. And that, in fact, that actually controls being able to get in and out. Generally, you see the same thing before you're about to go lucid. Whatever, it's generally attached to whatever's pulling the most of your energy. You see that right before you're about to go lucid. And if you decide to go in that direction, how it's playing out in the dream, you don't end up going lucid. I was able to actually pull apart, and this is again more in the advanced stage of lucidity and understanding how it's all put together and how it's connected. And how to make it work within everyone, or at least those that can comprehend the message enough. So still see that there's more to this, of course, and I'm not going to be able to get to it all today, but we're going to talk about a lot of it. So let's get back into the filters, because this is a major thing. What happens with the body is that because we have these chakra centers are, to us, our energy centers. They're more or less our generators or our dynamos. They used to call them Cronus because they were supposed to be wheels of time in which we would come into certain levels of consciousness. So all of this, basically this information and who we are and what we need to be, is packed inside of us like we're the seed. And that's how I see it also, that whatever the creators are doing, they encase all of whatever you need, your baggage, your luggage, your package, your family, the whole nine, all within you, and then they send you out into the universe and say, goodbye. We'll see you soon. And then when you go into the universe, you start to unpack that. And so now we have to see that a lot of this that we're dealing with, because we become so material, has everything to do with what's going on in the material plane. Meaning that if we're going to really get into this, we have to actually look at the physical world and what is going on here. We can't look into rhetoric. We can't look into the past, into the pyramids, and into all these different places that we're taking our consciousness to, but we can't necessarily verify what was going on there in this state. Meaning, so all of the knowledge that we can gather in this world today, that's what the resistance is doing, is skimming over it to see what is applicable. And what I've discovered, especially when it comes to disease, when it comes to a large amount of parasites building in the body, is that all of this is caused because of a low vibratory frequency. And that when the vibratory frequency is low, like frequencies magnetize to it. So if fungus is on the same frequency that your leg just happens to be on, then your leg gets attached to some fungus. It just magnetizes to you. I also discovered that many of the energies that we would call, let's say, angels or gods or advanced beings are just moving at a way more faster vibratory frequency. This doesn't, by the way, it doesn't make them good or bad. It just means they understand the principles of energy. When you're talking about north and south poles, like with magnets, which is a negative and a positive, it has nothing to do with what we call a negative and a positive in this world and how we've been taught to look at what's good and what's bad. So when I say a negative pole on a magnet, you may say, oh, the bad pole. And that's not how the poles work. They don't work with your emotion and your judgment over the pole. So what happens is that this is also a direct wake-up call to a lot of us to see that both ways. You realize that this, when you see religion fall down in front of you, and it will, it's fallacy, that the people who have this activation or this extra power, this foresight and this ability to see in these different things, it's only because they understand the energy principles, not because they're that great of people. And this is also will answer your question to why you see all this crazy stuff going on in the world that, as you could say yourself, if there was a God, then God needs to be doing something about this. Like, what is going on? But what's going on is that in the beginning, we have to, well, let's not get into it. In the beginning, we had to see our responsibilities, but more so than that, we now have to regroup. Like, the other thing is that to speak as if something hasn't happened already is a little premature, or not premature, but a little, this is not the place for it. We can't speak as if there wasn't just an entire war throughout the world. I'm not talking about World War II. I'm talking about holy war, where people lost their culture. Meaning they actually lost what cultivates them, and then they were placed in different soil, and now they got to grow up. And hopefully it takes, this is almost like planting, when you understand sowing and planting and how that has to do with occult symbolism. When you plant a seed, which we talked about how each person is a being. They say it's a being coming around, or there's a being hanging. It's a being, which is a seed of something that it can grow up if it's thrown in fertile ground, or it can actually get washed out if it's thrown in like the desert. So this is also how you see people in the world, like where they end up in that cultivation of where they are and how well the kings and the lords of the land take care of those individuals, generally govern what they think and how they grow up and how smart they are, what kind of stock they become. And this is why when religion steps into this, you'll see what happened is all religion was absorbed by the king. That's what Christianity and many of the religions that use Christianity as a component or similar to Christianity is because the king, they found it necessary to absorb also the God idea for people. And that's when the kings that were hunters changed themselves into priests that were shepherds that still ate off the flock, which is the same thing a hunter does, but in a different way. So we have to see that what we do is we spend energy every day like money. In fact, currency that we have, the current, is connected to the current within our body. We won't talk about that now. I just want to let people know that the things that are vying to change your frequency all the time, they're wanting you to spin. Go ahead and spend a kilowatt. Go ahead and spend 2 joules, please. On this, like you got to spend at least a megawatt on this. You see, so, and what happens is that because it's all external, because everything is engaging us, the energy is going out, we're spinning it out. So what happens, though, if that's actually what's keeping us from building up enough energy so that we realize our real potential? See, all of what I'm talking about on the phone, especially early, can not make a lot of sense to people when they're not powered on or been through at least a powered on experience. Because remember, some of us power on, and I've done it myself, and then turn off. But what still happens while you're powered on is there's a correction in the DNA. That's what the information didn't get to everyone. When you go through a spiritual experience or a near-death experience, the DNA is changed. Because that's what writes DNA. Now, on another level, the only thing that can also write DNA, not the only thing, excuse me, one of the other things that can write DNA is the third eye. The third eye can write DNA. And this is why, and I'm glad we got on top of this because I wanted to bring it up about the controlling of the dream world. See, if you look in the Sumerian painting, Sumerian, of course, is Nimrod, he's Hern, he's the hunter, he's Odin, etc. If you see they have the cone in the back of the head of the entity that is supposed to be the man, and then why they're standing behind the man with their wings and things, because they're supposed to be the angels or basically the archons. So they show that they can control the dreamer, control the mind through the cornucopic field of 528 hertz, which is the bottom of a pine cone, which is the third eye. So thus that their dream, like I said, they're dead, but they're dreaming. God is dead, his name is Dios. But their dream can be projected. And so you can basically every night have frivolous dreams if you don't know how to stay out of low frequency field as soon as you go to sleep. And let's talk about that. How to stay out of low frequency fields. There's most of the time, there's this ritual that we participate in every night before we go to sleep. We could call it the low frequency ritual. And let me tell you what it consists of. Either one, going to sleep completely exhausted. You're on a one-way trip to a low frequency. You're not supposed to sleep in theta frequencies. So if you have something that you're tied into, this is one reason why lucid sleeping won't be possible at times. So going to sleep completely exhausted. 2, going to sleep, sexual energy completely spent. Bad idea. You're going right into low frequency. Right. Of course, Christ is really Kundalini. Montauk Chai talks about how, especially with the male sexual energy, has to be contained within the body and then pushed up the spine in order for him to raise Kundalini. So when he uses it, it's really supposed to be to create a seed. And we'll get to woman and what she does also, but just to understand man first. What happens is that now, because you've spent, all the organs are now working to replace that, because that's their primary function is reproduction. Without reproduction, there's no life. So all the intention and the harmonics and the frequencies and the whole orchestra must quit in order to make more semen. They just know that there's no more semen. So what happens is that going to sleep like that, you're in low frequency. You're ready for a ride. So here's another way. Taking in too much programming before bed. You sleep in front of the program cathode ray tube, which is in the symbol of a hexagram, or 1080p, which is 3 times 360 is 3 circles basically. So you're looking at something that could spiral programmings into you when you're talking about a high definition TV. I'm not saying get rid of your high definition TV, but just still, a program is a program, a channel is a channeling. So let's just stop being kids here. So what happens is that you sleep in front of this thing, the next thing you know, you got more disturbance. It's not so much as bleed over. I mean, you don't necessarily dream that you're on Friends or one of the episodes of the TV all the time. But the basic dream is forgotten. Like you wake up, you don't really know what happened. You didn't really sleep. Because, of course, even if you take a baby and you put a newborn, right in front of a flat screen, and then you turn it on, you'll see what flat screens emit. Because the baby will, without it, no sound, no nothing. There's way too much just spray of frequencies of all sorts of nature just coming out of the TV. So of course we become very dense, so we can't really feel that. But as you become more subtle, it's very easy to feel it. So again, taking in too much programming, watch out for it. So that's the top of it. Like I will say that's the list that I had here, and of course cleaning the filters properly, which we talked about earlier. But that's the top of when you're going to bed. You basically want to, if you understand the whole body breathing techniques, pump up your body with prana. The dream vehicle runs on a fuel called prana. Prana it basically gives its fuel to your ethereal bodies, and how it's built is you understanding how to push oxygen into the lower level of the diaphragm in your back. This is called whole body breathing. It's a very simple technique. So it would seem just very normal unless your breathing will be very normal unless you know how to do this. When you know how to do this, you quickly see that you can get high on oxygen. You can get so high on oxygen, there's really not too many drugs here that can actually match that same kind of high, especially since all drugs are euphoric and bliss based, opiates, opiates, excuse me, but the word means serpent. So the reality is that when you know your chemistry, this is another thing that I was noticing, and that's what I said today, I'm like an encyclopedia. It's more of, what do you go and read the entire encyclopedia, or do you grab the part of the book that you want to know about or what you want to research? And so I definitely leave that open today to just ask the questions that you really want to know the answers to. Take a break, take a breath and just allow it to flow. Like, there's no time limit. But what happens here is that if you can actually channel the question that you know that you want to know the answer to, and of course everyone else wants to know the answer to it, then people actually get the answers. And of course I do have a nice clear recording over here for any type of breakups and things like that. There's a clear copy, so we can get right into this. But don't think that this is like someone that just they were coming and I have all this stuff, and then I have all these different networks and all these people, and I can't sit down and explain to you because I'm on this time limit, and it has to be all proper and it has to be all right. That's killing us. Like, what's happening here is that realistically we're dying only because we're not living. We're not, this is not life. Like, before I could settle for it because I didn't see anything else vividly, meaning I'd never been anywhere. I had never had any other spiritual experiences that I could verify for myself. But even as I say in my biography, I would see a lot of spiritual happenings going on around me just from the environment that I was raised in, enough to know something was going on, but not enough to accept it as my own truth. So still, just like if a man's trying to explain how it is to have a baby, he's going to fall short in a major way, only because he can never explain that, because he can never have a baby. So that's also how spirituality is, especially on the deeper levels, until you actually have an experience. Someone trying to explain to you just only does so much. So I want to tell people that today is that I'm going to do my best to explain the expanse and what's limiting you from the expanse. However, your interpretation also has to be able to kick in, and your imagination also, in order for you to feel what's going on in your personal life. Like what I'm talking about now is general application. I do want to also get into this bioenergetics, because it's really what I'm studying right now. I always like to talk about stuff that I'm doing right now, because I'm now seeing that when it comes to disease, and again, in pathogens and staph infections, staphylococcus, and these kind of ailments within the body, it's because there's entry and exit points to your body's magnetic field, which we call the aura. And what happens is that when one of the nodes that correspond to the organ or the gland that's actually failing switches its poles, then this causes what you know as a disease in that gland. So then the only thing that needs to happen is the points need to be located, and then the proper poles of the magnet need to be put there and applied there, and then the poles recorrect themselves, and then that corrects the ailment. And of course, this doesn't just have to do with disease. Like, most people are looking into this work almost in desperation because they're trying to cure some type of sickness, and I definitely feel them. What about us that are sick in a different kind of way? Like, sick of just hanging around doing nothing. Like, is there potential for that? And I say yes. There's actually potential to see it as it really is, which is simple, that the body is a wheel. If the wheel is offline and off balance, that 100% governs why you can't go into certain high frequencies. It's just like a wheel that you want to go 200 miles an hour, but it's not balanced. So every time it gets to about 120, it just has a blowout. And this is exactly what's going on with the body. So to go further, how do you generally correct these kind of problems within just regular wheels in this world? You balance them. So what do you balance it with? You balance it with this little piece of lead, and you put it in the area that is unbalanced. Okay, that correspondence to that little piece of lead on that tire for you is the actual piece of magnet in the area where your wheel is off balance. Now, if one person may step up haughty, activated, they think, or namaste, love and light, and say, oh, I'm not off balance, then why does one of your hands favor the other? Meaning, why do you use one more hand heavier than the other? When you're balanced, you don't do that. See, what happened was there was a bunch of people who jumped up that said, I'm activated. And this kind of screwed it up for a lot of us, because that believed that they were activated, because we gauge what activation is based on them. So basically what I'm saying is that if you go out and you study, let's say, Barbara Billingsley's work, and she says she's, activated and she's been, been sent here and she's tapped into the ascended masters and they're giving her these messages, and then you start to think that that's what it's like to be activated, then the only thing that you can do is imitate her. But the problem is reactivation has nothing to do with that kind of stuff. Activation is so individual. It's so personal. So what happens is that the only thing that we could really give to people is just the tools to activation. Telling them what they're going to be doing when they activate and all that kind of stuff is a little intrusive. And so this is also, of course, why you have these secret societies and you have these things, these different organizations running around that are activating their initiates to certain degrees, literally degrees, certain levels of their spine. They play them. They never take them to the top of the spine and never back around again to show them how to circulate the energy. Only just a little bit up the spine with just a little bit of activation. For those, again, I heard a lot of noise just all of a sudden quick, but that's great. So if you guys can still hear me. But so for those who are wondering also, it's like a big relief. All of a sudden all this noise went off. But anyway, so, so if those who are asking the questions like, okay, so what is stopping this from happening? Like, why isn't everyone doing this? And I think that we need to realize that the kingdom of Babylon just really got erected only 5,000 years ago, meaning from that point on, nobody was going to be doing this anyway. This is really our first time getting stationed enough to get into higher levels of spiritual knowledge that are not shrouded by zoomorphication. Zoomorphication, of course, is when you go to different countries, you see there's some animal that they're worshiping and some beast that they're seeing as a symbol of demons and all sorts of basically another GUI or a GUI put over the esoteric knowledge so that you can't get it. All you get is fear.
Yeah.
Now, here's the interesting thing also about humanity, though, because we are creative beings, which you'll see in lucid dream, and you can bring things that you create here in the lucid world, here in the reality in one shape or form. You'll find that when our powers are being used, our lucid dream abilities, etc., are being used to bring many of these darker energies that are introduced into the reality into this dimension, then it starts to make it uncomfortable for all of us. And of course that happened already. I'm not talking about something that is yet to happen. This is why we war so much and why we have so many conflicts, is because the knowledge and the wisdom that I'm also talking about is associated with power. And power is almost synonymous with angel if you read any ancient text, because it actually equates when you get on that level, not using angels, becoming the angel. And so this is, of course, seeing in the future. If you look at the traits and the abilities of angels, you'll see that they're actually encased within the abilities that are associated with the chakra centers. And the chakra center, of course, is definitely associated with the activation. So I can take a break for a moment if you want and take some questions. We could reset. This is about 47 minutes. I'm not sure if we just want to keep going and wait till it cuts out and then do it then, which we could do.
Yeah, let's keep going. I'm going to ask them the floor if they want to ask some questions. So we could probably, depending on what time you can go on till, we'll probably get people in for about 8:45, 9 o'clock to ask questions. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so continue. So,
okay. Yeah. Okay, so all right, so let me just regroup here with my notes. I wanted to see, I have a double hitter today, so that would be the only thing that limits how much time I can talk, only because I would have to get a little, stretch out before I get into that conversation.
Yeah,
but
no
this one was actually the light.
If you want to take a little break now, for
no, we're
straight. Do you want to do that?
No, we're straight. We're straight.
Yeah.
No,
okay.
I was just going to say that. So this show right here actually was the harmonic, beautiful show. Tonight, it's a whole different thing. That's what I was saying about this balance thing that we have to have on this dual dimension. It's like I know how to activate the vehicle. I've activated the vehicle myself. I've expanded so much that I've had to return. And the reason why you return, which means basically just turn around and to go back down and start distributing what you received up there into the plane, is because you start to not want to be there unless everyone's there with you. First of all, that's the key to actually getting there, by the way. You'll get a chance to see it one time, but if you think you're going to go do it for yourself, forget about it. You cannot harness enough energy with the emissions to make it up your ladder in order to in order to knock down all the things that would hold you back. Let me put this in perspective for people. What you're doing is you're raising energy, which has a lot to do with you, just how you are, up your spine. You can't lie to it. So what happens is that when you're thinking about this energy and you're just thinking about doing something for yourself, and this intention, the energy and the intention is not strong enough. So the energy, it can't well up. It's associated a lot with will and passion. So when you become passionate about something and you want to wake up, and that's why most of our messages daily should just be full of just us saying things that will make people want to start to wake up. And then but it's still going to be their choice. But once they get it though, it'll be like a fuel to them that will awake another eye in their body, because the whole body's full of eyes. So basically another eye wakes up, and then all of a sudden it starts to blink and it stays awake. What this means is that this wheel, which is generally, the chakras are generally locked inside of most people and inverted. When that breaks loose, the chain breaks off of it, the seal, as they call it. In some of these religions, they'll seal you. So when the seal breaks off, and then the wheel starts to vibrate and starts to speed up. And this actually creates a paranormal experience for the person at that point. But also, it's a heavy concern of how balances that wheel. Like, it's just like taking let's say it's a Ferrari, but it's been in the garage for 6 years. And you just crank it up. And then you try to fly that thing on the freeway and you can blow out the entire thing. So that's why this was like an art. Being able to turn, now it's almost like, to me, it kind of reminds me of running a war zone and I throw someone an information pallet, yo, activate continuity. We're being bombarded, attack ships off the shoulder of Orion, help. You know what I mean? Like when I look at the reality and I see what's moving across and where it came from and what it's associated with, and then I look at the rulers of the reality and I look at their seals and things like that, and I can see the correspondence to that. Just not so much as the extraterrestrial malevolent, but the emulation of a malevolent extraterrestrial. See, I don't have to always see a malevolent extraterrestrial to confirm that there's one there. Only thing I need to see is people who believe that there is one acting out as such, which is what our world is doing. So it kind of like lets a person make a decision. I keep also talking about today that, and I'll talk about some more today, that a lot of times we're just looking for more questions to be answered so we can have more questions. But the truth of what we need to do, we would have done a long time ago if we believe what we heard last time. Meaning that when someone say, hey man, someone's at your house doing something, and you get up, you're gone. Because you believed what they were saying. But some of this stuff that I'm talking about, if not all of it, is just as pertinent, right? But it doesn't make you necessarily go get up and say, okay, this is it. I'm done. They're not going to hold me down any longer. I'm starting today. But then I tell you the truth. Through the last 3 or 4 years of the resistance, a lot of people have done that. Something that they've heard in the message allowed them to say, you know what, this is it. Sometimes you can see a lot of the distraughtness in the world and empower yourself on it. Sometimes people feel depressed about what they see in these other realms, in these other countries and what's happening there. And then they feel almost helpless.
Yeah, that's right.
So the converter, though, can move in and say, okay, that's still energy to me. I can take it and I can make it empower me to access something that will stop that.
Yeah.
And then you start getting this feeling inside, as long as you don't become a fanatic. Now, the fanatic, of course, is when it's overboard, that you actually didn't figure out how to balance the energy. Notice how what I keep talking about is a spewing out on any level. Like they talk about the movie The Matrix, or the Animatrix. Some people figure out about the Matrix in entirely different means. This means that some people, just in the passion and level of what they believed in, started understanding the activation and seeing and feeling the activation. It wasn't always through, some of the methods that we're using now. So this lets us also have to ask ourselves, are there other activated humans here on the planet? Like, I think why we're focusing so much on our own activation and we're finding pieces everywhere. We got at least some people who we know how to do it, like Dynamo Jack on the YouTube, showing the Qigong. So we see individuals know how to do it, but are there individuals that really know how to do it like all the time? And the answer is yes. There are people who this is all they do, meaning staying activated is all they do. And then from beyond that, because of course, like I said, when activation, everything begins, they are engaged in other agendas, especially that are involved with this planet. And that's what they're doing now. You see what I mean? So there's a point after this is what I'm trying to get everyone to see. After activation, you need to start thinking about when you can fully hear everything that's going on. When you become fully in the know about everything that's going on and how you will proceed. Or else you won't prepare yourself to deal with what every single adept in this world has dealt with. That moment when they have to make the decision about how their powers are going to be used. This is a pivotal point. Yeah. Once you come into activation, it's something to prepare for now. I'm glad we're having the conversation. Some people need to be on the line glad they didn't activate already. They're going to probably go into activation, but you need to know what is actually going on when you hit that network of your whole mind is open, basically. Because the world is sometimes similar to a mirror. You know how with just a regular mirror, if you can turn that mirror and you can see someone, if they can look into that mirror, they can see you. So basically how the world is set up with the optics and the illusions, etc., is that once that breaks down, now you can see all of the inner workings to everything. Some people are already starting to experience some of this kind of sight by just being able to connect a large amount of synchronicities in their life at one time. Like, okay, this guy's name, his license plate, the number on this door. It gets a little crazy, but you start seeing this interweaving web of how everything is still working together.
Yeah.
So what happens is, of course, the first thing that you begin to think is that it's actually working against you if you're able to see it. So what I'm talking about is in the levels of activation, the grounding is so necessary. Because first of all, I was just in the beginning only thinking about flying off. I didn't, like, someone mentioned me ground. I was like, ground? I'm trying to fly. Never realizing that ground is just as important.
That's the first thing people want to do when they go into like lucid dreaming and venture into this realm, isn't it?
For sure.
Fly.
For sure. I mean, they want to fly and they want to, then make people fall in love with them, and
yeah.
All sorts of ideas start coming up, and those same ideas are the same ones as as what the reality has been holding. It's a part of it that's holding people back. You see what I mean? It's like, that's why I always say all is self, because we have to deal with everything and everyone's problems so that we know how to neutralize that within. Like, only thing I'm seeing when I watch the Queen run around and I watch all these other individuals run around is another part of me running around, not checked. You see what I mean? So, because what would happen is if you understood how to pinpoint that inside of yourself and deal with it there, it would be dealt with in the external reality very fast. Because that reality is more superior than this one, meaning that when you can isolate even that each country in this world is a specific part of your body. Your body is a specific part and laid out, like a map of the universe itself. That there's a micro and a macro cosmic level of your connection to everything that you can choose to isolate even from one point in your skin, the entire corresponding field to all the other planes and dimensions that you exist on. See, that's why this is so touchy. And some people think, well, wait a minute, that just sounds like way more potential than we really have. No, the Earth symbol is a cross for a reason. Remember, for astrological symbols, a circle and a cross. And that's because two opposing points cross here. They go by each other here. Meaning that this spirit that we have inside of us and then this body have hooked up. But normally they're going in the opposite direction. Normally these two don't have anything to do with each other. But guess why? Magnets. Opposites attract. So when you can understand that principle, it starts to really work with everything. You can put it over anything. You can put over a person's disease. You can put it over a world problem. You can put it over the problem with the economy. You can even put it on just the problem with the car. And it will work. That's universal knowledge. Now, the importance of this kind of tool would be, no matter what happened, if you get blown off in the solar wind, you'll still be able to guide yourself. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about we only need knowledge that's not based on what Keisha did and what James had going on and what Robert and them were doing over at the pub. We don't need that data. We need the data that's like when you're trying to navigate in the ocean, you pull it out and it lets you know where you are. So that, of course, it's a good thing that that's located inside of the body and not out of it. If you want to know, and it's kind of a joke now, but for many people, it won't be a joke. If you want to know where you hid the spaceship, inside the best place. Like you didn't put it.
Would you be talking about also the that spaceship being the Merkaba?
Well, see, this is where we get into the other fields, because what the Merkaba really is a way to control the light field. It's like in itself a filter over it. So the Merkaba in itself is a filter or a cage for the next vehicle. You see what I mean? So the cage for this vehicle is the physical vehicle, so the dodecahedron, or what we call a pentagram. That's what the geometry boils down to. It's phi. The next vehicle, which you can call, we were talking about before, this mental body. Okay, the mental body has this Merkaba field around it, and it uses that Merkaba field to travel through the mental planes, which are full of communication and data. Remember, the mental plane is the reason why it was related to Saturn and the pole being a hexagram is because in the hexagram always being used in communication. It's because the mental body projects this symbol when it travels. You see what I mean? It travels in that symbol because that's the only way that it can link up with subsequent information on every single level in rapid time. You see what I mean? Almost no time. But again, Saturn has everything to do with time. It's the same symbol. It's the symbol of what you would see in a beehive. So that hive mind communication network is like internet, but for spirits, not for, Mac users. So what happens is that that's what we're talking about. So you have to be specific when you get into the geometry, because geometry is external. It's what we created to try to map out a world that already existed. Something that so we can bring it into an external reality. So when I talk pentagrams, when I talk dodecahedrons, when I talk Merkabas, when I talk enneagrams, I'm talking about a straight line mesh that I'm trying to put over something that is superflush and curved. So no matter what, I'm never going to be able to fully emulate it. I may be able to bring out an external version of it and it'll probably pass away, but it will never be like the original organic one. And this gets us on a key point, because when you start seeing a lot of inorganics created in the reality, obviously we can see what's organic here, like the trees, and then we can see what's inorganic, like the computers. Still see that the creators of the computers are the ones with the numbers, etc., that are creating these inorganic straight line worlds that are copycats but never can be alike the real natural curved spiritual world. You see what I mean? But that's why they can bring you almost an exact duplicate, even one that you think is perfect. You know how people think straight line, oh, it's so perfect. This is because the mind has been trained to think that just having a straight line means that it's perfect. When actually, when it's curved, it's perfect. And then, of course, this goes deeper. Now, look, we're going deep into the mind. So then when the person looks at themselves and they say, well, the curve is not perfect. And then they look at their arm and I'm curved. I'm not perfect. And then, look, so as soon as they turn around, they grab the book. And the book tells them, the Bible or whatever, you're not perfect. Oh, there it is there. And then they go into the room. And the husband says, you're not perfect. The dinner is not perfect. You see, so this is what really happens when the knowledge and the wisdom starts to spiral out of control as it's playing out in the reality. When you release a symbol, that starts getting misinterpreted and damaging things every time it's shown to an individual or spoken to an individual improperly. So, that Merkaba, it's led to a lot of stuff here in the reality. Even Drumvella Melchizedek said it himself, why, they're still playing around with it. But he said, I bought the Merkaba mysticism to everyone about 15 years ago, and I'm quoting him. And everyone didn't get it. They did everything I told them not to do with it, making themselves younger, making themselves more beautiful. So now this is a man that doesn't lie. You could tell he doesn't really get into the lie field. So he's just telling you right off the bat that when they bought the knowledge of how to control the mental body so that it affects the physical body into this world just recently, the adherents of it, because those are the ones who paid for it, the ones who had the money to get the knowledge and go through the courses, just started trying to rewind themselves and make themselves look beautiful and all the rest of the vain stuff that happens when you still don't get it. See, that's what it is about this whole knowledge. I can give you the great arcanum right now, but if it's just not something that is actually inside of the individual, they can't do nothing with it anyway. They still find a way to convert even the greatest things into their frequency, right? So now look again and see, if that can happen that way, it can also happen the other way around. Something with such beautiful potential as the human being, when some people online say, I don't think that we really have that type of power. Wait a minute. It's just because, like I was just saying before, the limiters and the governor that has been put on humanity is starting to determine what they really are. But that doesn't mean that it's correct. And that's where, I come in, because I've had a chance to say, I don't have time to jump on anybody's side. I didn't have any problems with the money. I didn't need people's money. I don't have the impediments and all the rest of the stuff that goes on with why you have these Achilles heels that every time you try to go into high levels of spirituality, you get diverted one way or another and then start talking some mumbo jumbo and telling people go worship and believe in some God or something like that. Mm-hmm. So with me, it was the right equation just within my life. That doesn't make me, to me, it doesn't, I don't sit all day and think that I'm special. The reality is that that's something that you should be able to see, not think. And that's the other thing, we spend so much time and thought, but if there's, I'm at 2,000 blogs and counting. So the reality is, and we're still cracking through this. And then, and like I said, you start realizing that even when you hit the highest levels of energies that are containable on this planet, you want to see others benefit off of that too, because that was the way you actually got to it. And I said that earlier, but again, if you didn't do that first, like me, I reversed the equation. I gave away all the stuff that I knew I was going to lose again in about 2 years anyway, and then I turned my entire life around. And then from that point, I started seeing the benefit off of it. I'm smart enough right away to say, okay, this is the right way. Some people, they need to go back again and make the mistake again, then just to see, I did it right. But we can't, as brothers and sisters, we have to start helping each other not really keep taking those lambs or those detours on the path, because there's so much more we could already expand it into. And it's now our world to take it. Even the Queen said this on her movie. She says, maybe the society needs to go into the hands of the younger people. Good idea. Excuse me. But serious, it's now time for people to really see that the potential here is really still gauged within the individuals that are here, showing you that the entity called God is resident on the planet, and how God acts, meaning how people act daily, and how they see God, just according to these religions, is going to determine how they act out every day. Now, here's another thing that I really wanted to bring up, just for everyone to get it very clear about why I'm always anti-God, because some people become very offended by that. But it's very important for you to understand history and her story, because it's the key component to everything. It's the reason why we keep getting played like stooges around here, playing around with these gods. And the fact is, because one thing, when we started quarreling with one another, and then we started calling upon gods, which weren't given that name, by the way. Each tribe had a name for who it will call upon. We called upon that to do away with or destroy our enemy. So this would have to mean that what we were calling upon was not friends of our enemy. So this means we have to call upon a specific angel, deity, God, or whatever you want to give it the name as, so that way it can go and attack these other people. So what kind of being is that anyway? This is what people never think about. When you pray to God or Jesus or whoever, and you say, go attack those people and help us in our battles, that means obviously that it doesn't get along with them. So the reason why I'm trying to drive this home is people need to understand that is the whole linchpin to this thing. We started evoking, whether it's from the lucid dream, astral plane, or whatever, entities that were associated with war, sometimes called Martians, the red planet. And we bring these energies into the physical reality to help us and give us power, only for a moment, though, so that we can go and exact vengeance on some other person's tribe or country. So go ahead.
Like normal everyday people, the average person can access their dreams, their lucid dreams, or the astral world, and do the opposite. Bring positivity to the planet. Is that what you're saying as well?
For sure, that, you know, especially with the right intention of understanding what you need to be doing in there. That's kind of where it starts. It's like the lucid dream thing has kind of become almost like people looking at it like a PlayStation. You know, of a place that they can get into and start playing their own world. But really the potential within it is for us to, and actually also the access to it, by the way. Remember, the lucid dreams world is guarded to a certain degree. Because there's still a gauge between an individual who can get in like once, maybe twice a week, versus a person who can get in 4 or 5 times a week. This is what governs it, because you have to be able to pick up on the thought stream from where you left off last. Or else it's like the lucid plane is like a journey. It's not just kind of there to pop up, oh, I'm lucid tonight. It's like, okay, you pick up with where your lesson left off, because it's an entire loading plane for the individuals who have attained the frequency to open up the eye that corresponds with lucid dreaming. It's highly governed because, like I said before, anyone getting in there and consistently manifesting great things for themselves will bleed that over into the reality, and then it will start to become a part of their reality. So you basically can alter your physical timeline in the dream plane.
Okay, so what governs it?
What governs it is the webs and the nets that you see that are put on over the planet, like the Wi-Fi. An easy test to see this is, well, first of all, if you ever want to see all of the grids, for 2 weeks, you'll have to go in what they call a dark room meditation. And what this is that you're basically in this dark room for at least 4 or 5 days is when it starts to kick in. But you start to be able to see low infrared, like your eyes have the ability to see low infrared, but they only do that when you don't look at the sun or direct lights and phosphorus lights for a prolonged period of time. Then what happens is if you come out of the room and then you go out at night and you look up at the sky, you'll see fields, entire bubbles over the earth in specific geometry. This is why I think we call it a planet. Now, some people think that that's like a cage, but I will tell you that it also serves as a level of protection, because we need these separate atmospheres in order to which is what they are too. That's how they come out organic. They're atmospheres that you have to go through several levels of the atmosphere in order to penetrate it completely. So this is the same as a person's consciousness. A person has several layers of consciousness that manipulate what their inner consciousness thinks is really going on. Okay? Does that make sense to you? So the inner consciousness sees through an eye that is already got filters over it, i.e. Hexagram, pentagon. You can see these different geometries. And so what this causes is a person to see a certain way, dualistic, hateful, etc. So that's what you're really dealing with. That's what you're dealing with. So how you penetrate those fields. It's because most people say, okay, so what you're saying is I need to actually to control my own dream. So my dream is not being controlled by someone. I need to go through those fields and then dream in that outside of there. I'll tell you, yes, but inside. You have to penetrate to the deepest layers of yourself. This is your chakra fields are more like an orb around you rather than one just in one area in the low part and the high part. When it blows out, it's like several layers or atmospheres. So what you must do is you must basically center yourself completely so that you're not hearing the influence of your other frequencies and harmonics. You're making them basically come all into one solid tone, focusing, and then that's what you're wanting to achieve.
Okay. So basically, people. The advice you would give to people would be to meditate, basically, and try to activate their chakras and at the same time balance them as well.
Well, it's very specific. Like if we would just want to go over it like a checklist. It's first, again, you are what you eat. Like what you take in is definitely going to govern all of what you're going to be able to do. And just remember, only thing that's going on with the body is different stages of energy. Certain stages of energy are accompanied with certain abilities. Lucid dreaming is not one of the highest stages of ability, so it doesn't take a lot of energy to finally get lucid. It really takes more of a technique, which is like making sure you don't go to sleep with a full stomach of food. I think that was the only one that I missed off the list. Not going to sleep spent. Not going to sleep when you're completely exhausted, meaning not going to sleep and expecting to lucid dream. Waking up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. Generally, wherever you are, the sun starts to rise around that time, or right before the sun rises, because not right before, about 30 minutes before you wake up, you reset the body, we call it, come out of theta, and then go back to sleep again. And then you're in this lighter sleep. Now, trust me, if you wake up for only like 45 seconds to a minute, you'll go back to sleep. So don't think that, if you wake up, it's going to mess up your sleep. But reset your body, make it wake up, stand up, or just shake yourself off, acknowledge I'm awake, and then go back to sleep. And then when the sun is coming up, the sun allows the mental body to travel faster, because the sun is also a Merkaba. Like it's, you can see it. It's a dynamo. It's two interlacing triangles, which are creating a vortex field, which is actually allowing it to give off heat. It's the same thing that our chakras do. That's why the sun is trying to be synonymous with the soul, okay? But the soul is internal. The sun is external. So the sun corresponds more to the mental body, and the sun that is incorporated within the mental body, versus what the soul inside of you in the inner sun, which is a magnetic field, more corresponding to what's in the side of the core of the earth. This is why I'm also trying to show people that all you have to do is you have to get this micro macro vision. You have to be able to look at it on the outside. And if you can find anything that's true enough on the outside, you should definitely be able to find a really deep correspondence for it in the inside. And often you'll have to use that method in order to really start to pinpoint what's going on around you. Remember, there's a way you get into a consciousness where you don't realize what's going on. Obviously, that occurred. We may not have been the direct culprits, but it looks like some level of ritual or activity in which the ancestors participated in. Meaning that walking in the same grooves of our ancestors and what they did and how they eventually started doing, etc., is going to be 100% a level of experience. The ancestor would put it there almost like a module that we would have to run of their first level of this thing. You see what I mean? Like, a lot of times we need to look at how this really works. If you're in a universe, and let's say that we're speeding along in the universe, all of the reality is created behind the larger celestial bodies that are moving in front. So this is also what I call the control point. If you're trying to control things from your physical body, it's a heavy time delay. But if you move into your spiritual body and control things there, then it's faster. It's done right away. And then it bleeds into the rest of this reality. So, I didn't do a good job at really conveying what I mean by that. But there's a smear, or more or less a time delay, of the larger celestial bodies moving in a like an opera themselves, like all of what you see going on. And that's why they tried to make the planet, they tried to make the sky into zodiac with animals, and they tried to attach a story to it. And then it's only when someone else tried to put themselves in there, and then someone didn't like their role in there, and everything starts getting changed. But if you see the original story that's playing out in the sky, especially with Orion, like right now, that's what I was saying about the other half of the wholeness these days, is dealing with the Orion situation, which is there is now another intelligent life form that is here on the planet and has been on the planet for at least 5,000 years, that is heavily involved in manipulating the human species into continuously giving up their energy to a system that always engages in war with itself. So, and that's obvious. It's like hard to not notice. So it's like, well, I'm still trying to get Ascension. These fools over here acting up. And who are they? They're none other than brothers. That's what, even how the indigenous, like, why you want to say, okay, well, Orions, the Draconians, it's the reptilians we need to get rid of. Look, man, didn't I just tell you? It's another part of us, not checked. And so this is also what happens when we run around in this reality and we stop taking responsibility for what we eat. Then we open up the portals that are necessary to be open within us by consuming the blood. And this is like, one of those dynamics where it's a weaning off process. It's almost like how you have to take a child off breast milk. But the meat is not something that we need to or should be incorporating into our diet, for the simple fact that again, if we were real carnivores, we have to eat it right then, because it dies within 5 seconds, anything as far as nutrients. 2, it's impure blood, meaning that because we're humans and our bloodline is so pure, us eating an animal's blood, especially that stalwart, been in the stalls and things, is just like, oh my goodness, look at him. Like, so if you could see like your galactic parents up there, when you eat a piece of chicken, they're like, oh my goodness, what's wrong with him? I could see a pterodactyl, but dang, you know what I mean? But I think they say a chicken was a pterodactyl. But anyway, but that's what I'm saying. It's like, so remember the reward system though. It's not about like me, I stand 6'2", and I'm generally around 180 pounds, and I pack a punch, and I haven't eaten in 7 years. So it's not about the weight thing. It's not about losing muscle, especially when you know, especially when you know how to govern your diet. You can eat off of Amazon.com as a person who eats non-meat, but the benefits of it. That's the thing. There's pros and cons to everything. You won't be as aggressive, but aggressive in the wrong way at times. Aggressive like a food dog running around. But what I'm saying is that you lose certain things to gain other things. And this is how we have to start treating the vehicle. We have to stop treating it like it runs things. So when you tell it, like even right now, when I said to somebody that you may have to stop eating meat, some idea went to a person's mind that said, no, he's wrong. I tell you, that idea is not yours. That idea belongs to another thing, another part of your body that is trying to respond in your way. Like, no, you need to keep eating meat. You have to see your body as this. It operates like this. And this is why, because each thing, each bacteria, each worm has its own frequency. Frequencies are attached to thoughts. And I'll show you why. Candida, which is a worm that builds up heavily within the bowel and in those areas, is stimulated and grows based on the full moon and candy. So when you get that signal that around the full moon's in the waxing phase, and you're like, man, I got to get something sweet. It's not your idea. It's the frequency of candida. And this is 100% proven. So how many other things in your body then that are pathogens and viruses or dormant viruses, even from vaccinations, etc., that can act like they can demand and take control of what the vehicle should be doing? So thus, your car gets hijacked, and this is what happens with a lot of people. Your car gets hijacked, and then you get crashed on the rocks, meaning that after you accept the idea of something else that just wants to gratify itself for that moment, and then they crash the car, then they're out the driver's seat, leaving you to deal with the situation that has occurred when the vehicle's been damaged. Now, of course, how that plays out in reality is later on in life, if you're continuously eating this crazy stuff and doing these crazy things, when you're older, you start to regret that you did any of that. But at that point, you're generally not in a position to be able to replenish yourself again. But I tell you the truth, you can. It's in bioenergetics. Apparently, the entire body in itself, the only thing that starts to make it act old and to feel old is when the cellular bonds, and I may be using the wrong words here, and sometimes the atomic bond, I think is what I'm looking for, which is all magnetic, starts to loosen, meaning the magnetic field becomes weak. So you need a field, which prana does. Prana has the ability to charge magnetic fields. You need something that can strengthen your magnetic field so it increases your bond. And then when your bond is increased, this increases conductivity. This leads to you not forgetting anything. This leads to you not being sleepy. This leads to the skin being rejuvenating itself fast enough so that it doesn't collect wrinkles. So this is really, again, what they will call the panacea, or what can actually cure all things.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. The candida thing really got me. I mean, candida, is it?
Yeah.
Isn't that a sweetener?
Well, actually, it's a worm, but the candida, it sounds so much like candy. You see, remember, etymology plays a heavy game in all of this too. This is the only way you can wrap a person into an illusion, is that at every angle or at every angel, that there is something there that is there to persuade them to see or believe something that may not even be there. But the etymology is what is the major hinge point to making sure that you say the right things. Like, remember before I told you that there was a problem with Orion. He's a hunter. Okay? So when you go into church, let me show you the etymology there. You're told to pray. Pray means,
yeah.
Okay? So then, now you're to go to the pulpit. So to pull you in the pit. Now you're going to be altered. Now here's the altar. Give up your altar. Now you're about to be altered. Your DNA can be changed
by the entities that they're dealing with there. Because remember, that's why you see Nimrod holding this pine cone, because they already locked into the way of how to alter and change a person's mind to believe something that may not even be true. Who is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords? Like, when does spirituality have anything to do with dominions of a physical plane? And of course, that's when it also gets dangerous, because if you're bringing something into the physical reality that doesn't even have application here, it's always going to be distorted. And that's why in the physical reality, when we at times go to look for true spiritual knowledge and true spiritual guidance, it gets all distorted. Even within the language alone, there's a certain degree of distortion to even what I'm saying today. And so the goal is to, at least with what we can, we do understand each other enough to point the person within and say, okay, look, brute force way, deal with yourself from the mind, body, and soul. Take down the body first, because if you're highly 3D, if you're material, what do they say, the matrix or Ma, you're in a matrix of the material mass. If you happen to find yourself primarily in that field, then attack the body. And know that the body is a beast. You're not going to just wrestle that thing down like you. That's what by the way, the whole occult rites were definitely misconstrued. But and then even energies were bought out using people's imaginations that had nothing to do with the story. But in the beginning, wrestling and taming the beast had everything to do with basically putting your body in check. And then the beast became the cherubim. If you understand the deep occult knowledge, you'll understand that quote-unquote God rides around on the cherubim, but the cherubim, also known as the chair or char or the chariot or the cherubim angel, was the vehicle of God. Okay, so they're telling you it right there, that as men and women being gods and goddesses, that they're riding around in the cherub with the four corners, or the beast on the four different sides, the bird in the front, the cow in the back, the ox, the endurance, the lion. So all the attitude, you see, it's all there. You're inside the cherub. But now the cherub is controlling things, which is also a part of this same ancient story, that the cherub rose up and said that it was God. But what happens when a person's physical body raises up and says, the physical plane is the only plane that exists. This is all we need to be worried about. Okay, follow the cherub if you want to. It's going to continue to keep you in the garden. Because if you look into the ancient stories, so the cherub was put in the garden and remained circling around the garden, keeping anything from exiting or entering the garden. So what happens is that this is how our consciousness plays against us at times, because there is these suggestions that occur all the time. And when we follow those suggestions, then we just never activate for that day. It's just not today, maybe tomorrow. Let's sign them up for tomorrow. Maybe it's a battle every day. And that's why I said the battles are waged every day. And it's because when you open your eyes, boom, they're like, okay, he's up. You ready? Because the whole goal is, like I told you, like actors that don't want to see you go beyond and become the star yourself. They just want to entertain you so you can keep the energy transfer going on with them. Still realize this, but a lot of this is introspection. So if the person's not used to talking to themselves and dealing with themselves, but they're used to always going outside for assistance, you see why they somehow fall short of coming into this level of knowledge, or at least the application of it. But this is why it's got to come to people now, because they can't even afford at times to go here and go there and sit around with Sri Baba, whoever, and, get touched on and licked on and whatever. And it doesn't work, $4,000 or $5,000 later. I mean, come on. Like, if there's a resistance, that's what it's a resistance against. Wasting time. Against
the falsities.
Yeah.
You're breaking up a bit.
Okay.
Sevan.
I think maybe we should. You think we should go ahead and do some resetting here?
Yeah. Shall we? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I need the lavatory as well.
Okay.
Good timing, to be honest.
Yeah.
So
sure.
we'll come back in the next 5 minutes or so. Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do that, and then
maybe when we come back, we can take some questions. Is that okay?
For sure.
Do you want to go further into the bioenergetics?
Well, no. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into that even through the questions. So yeah, let's do some question time.
Okay then. Right. We'll pull you right back in
All right.
5 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so.
Bye.
Okay.
In a bit.
Wholeness.
Yes. Good thanks, Sevan. Good thanks.
Hello, Sevan.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, we've got a few people who want to ask some questions actually. So I mean, if we continue for the next 10 minutes or so, then we can bring them in. Will that be okay? Sevan?
Yeah, actually, we can take those questions now. I know I was actually listening to it, so I heard someone had a question there in the studio. So let's get to it, man. I'm telling y'all,
Okay,
I got to do this 36 hours thing, man, one day.
Technical man, is the mic working? Okay. Is it? Can people hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Can it, Mohammed?
I think it needs turning on.
It is on.
Is it on more? Okay.
Alright. Yeah, it's working. Okay, I've got the mic working. So, Kendrick Mohammed, do you want to come in the screen so everyone can see you? You can just take a seat here. Yeah, it's fine.
Don't sit on the lap.
You can come in. Alright then, Kendrick Mohammed, I'll pass the mic to you.
Peace and blessings, Sevan.
Wholeness, it's good, definitely good to hear from you.
Okay, well, it's really good to speak with you. You've heard about Professor Leonard Jeffries, a professor from New York, where there's a concept about the sun people and the ice people, Europeans being more individualistic and capitalistic, and the African being more communal and spiritual, Caucasians more left brain oriented, the African more right brain, intuition and spirituality. Then you have Professor Joel Pookrum, or Dr. Joel Pookrum, who talk about the melanin on our skin and throughout our bodies that accentuates our intellectual and spiritual capacity. Or the quilled African here that can attract and harness energy. Or the activated pineal gland where the Caucasian is deactivated because of the higher calcium concept. And of course you got Michael Bradley, author of Iceman's Inheritance, who studied at Princeton and Yale and Harvard, and talks about, asks questions why Europeans behave the way they do. Sigmund Freud asked the same questions. Dr. Mendel talked about the dominant African and the recessive European. You can get the other members of the human family from the original or from the dominant, but not the recessive. So my question to you is basically, what are the distinctions between the various members of the human family? The Honourable Minister Louis Farrakhan, Malcolm X, nomination of Islam, talk about the white man being the devil. Of course, teach that the black man is the devil, can be the devil as well.
Right.
So I guess I'm just asking you what the distinctions are, in particular between the African and the European. Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Awesome question. I guess I've been answering these surface questions for so long. He threw the deep question, and now I'm like, okay, all right, let me get the arsenal over here. Let's just definitely go with it, brother. Of course, I noticed that I do these disclaimers now before I start talking. If anyone gets offended in the conversation, just know that wasn't the intention. But all truth must be known, especially as far as how I feel about the situation and what I've perceived when asking myself the same question about, what is the difference between one man over the other, one woman over another, and why will certain members of the species do certain things. So when I proposed that question to my oversoul, the first thing I was told is, first of all, we still need to remember we were created to function in a unit. In fact, we function as a unit as far as when the focal point of this world or universe was created, which happened at some point, everyone was there. And only until you begin to disperse and divide so much to where you no longer recognize your brother and sister is the only time that the quarrels take place and everyone doesn't realize what everyone's job and duty really is. I will say that within all species is very similar to each planet. There's a good side and a bad side. There's a dark side to each side. There's a dark side to each planet. And so just like Earth has day and night, these other planets have day and night. So that would be the first part of what I would say is a major dissertation about where each, I guess if we were to call it root race, and that's not necessarily a theosophical viewpoint, but it's just it's a viewpoint really from the ancient scripture and using the word root because the knowledge has been passed to humanity for a while, but it's still under wraps that the trees played a major part in the beginning of our arrival here, and the trees hold vast levels of consciousness. And And so when we really get into this, what you'll find that each race corresponds to a specific tree and the traits of that tree and the seeds in which it drops. In not only just one tree, but the flora and fauna of where a person is raised, what they eat, like mainly what they eat, my good friends, in the region that they've been bound to. Because remember, each person that was spread out in this world and their race was spread out, that region that they first arrived in is like them arriving from their constellation. So the constellations are laid out over the entire over the entire world. And so you'll have the beginning of every single race like in the stars. And so what I started seeing in all of this, of course, because I can get really deep into the story to explain to you how the whole procession, how the orchestra, how it starts to play out. But the one that is at the height of this entire thing has actually pushed all that away from them. They've actually like emancipated from even that. They've come out of the celestial procession or the wheel. The wheel is just as you see in All That Power by Kanye. You see the entire, all of the constellations, Andromeda and Zeus and everyone in this, basically this opera, acting out the energies and the expressions in which the stars emit on the people that live on the planet. So meaning that what changes how a person acts, whether you see their melanin or you don't see their melanin, or you see their soul, because there's other things to be considered beside the melanin, but that is highly subjective to more dynamics. Like also, instead of looking at how what's wrong with an individual, where's the great arcanum? Because I see all the problems only as more of a reason to find that, meaning that it's not just the white folks, for better lack of words. It's also, the Chinese man, if you're going to get into it. And it's also the Russian man, if you're going to get into that. And then, don't forget, there's this whole other group of people that are invisible. And so what I see is a lot of citing and pointing of the fingers, because that's actually what is said in the books. Because look at it in yourself. When you're born, you are a composition of the stars, or the stardust that is in your star cluster. So before you're born, a star appears in a certain constellation. Now, there's a lot of stars out there. You just never see how many there are these days. But when you know the one that actually corresponds to you, when you appear there, all the major celestial bodies in your constellation influence you the most, just as gravity acted upon you. Meaning, just like gravity acts on you here on the planet, the sway of the persuasion of the stars and what they have done, these ancestral paths and where they've walked, holds sway over you. So if you want to talk about the Caucasian who are from Sirius, and many of them already understand their connection with Canaan and their connection with Big Five, the dog star Anu, and why they erect the Anu statue there in Denver and in different places in Anubis. And just that whole covenant with Canaan and what happened with Caleb, which is the companion to Israel, who is the hunter, Orion, also Osiris and Sirius by way of Venus. So what you're actually looking at is with the dynamic between the what color is more dominant is actually two oligarchs, whether it's dark-skinned Dravidian, almost with the symbol of the priesthood, which is the actual breastplate of still the reptilian nature that they were infused with, or wild beast of the forest himself with the horns still on the head, appearing on the astral realm from people who have evoked him in the last Metallica song. You see, so when you really look and you take the colors off, because that means that you actually come out of the prism, or you come out of the prison. Because all of these different races are just the same light shined into a prison and then made to appear as if there's 7 colors, or 7 different races, or 7 different kind of people. Or whatever I'm saying is the differences that you see within everything, when you look in the soul, they're all the same in retrospect. It's like either the soul is pushing forward for its full awakening, or it's putting itself in a deeper level of sleep. Meaning it's either centripetal or centrifugal force. It's either spinning clockwise or Widdershin. And this is what is generally seen by something like the universe. Like, because the universe doesn't have time to get in all the dynamics. Like, is he black? Okay, did that boy play ball? Okay, what about this person? Did they go to the league? Okay, did he take the umim and the thummim? The universe doesn't move so fast because it doesn't do that. See, we have to see also this information that was given by Hermes was actually a huge, this languages and things are a huge mistake for us because we were beings that just used our memories. When we start writing it down created two problems. One, it creates the crutch of you losing your memory. And the second thing is it also lets one person depend and base things upon what you're writing down, not what they've experienced. You see? So everyone in the universe before would go through all of this stuff and not have anyone try to explain it to what they were going to experience. But now we're slowing down into that smear of time where every single essence in the sky actually becomes a physical three-dimensional being and attempts to act out in the character, in the lowest level of its character that is portrayed in the sky. Meaning that no longer do you see the great and mighty stand forth and shine bright and walk us through the universe in spaces that we've never been before and we all experience together, and then the parents are there and everyone's smiling, there's a whole radiation of bliss. That's not what we're seeing. We're seeing the Diaboli rampaging the earth as men are spiraling in darkness as they lose more knowledge and wisdom about who they really are. And that's done in daily activity, not in books. Daily activity, as I said, the battles every day. Every time there's an intrusion, meaning whatever you have to take in. If you start watching everything, whatever you have to take in, whatever you're reading, whatever someone's saying or whatever, and you just kind of watch it and put it under a microscope, you'll see certain things embedded within it. Meaning you'll see that there is a connection between all of the forces that are attempting to throw you off and take you off your game. That's how I really came into the highest level of knowledge for myself on this dimension, in regards to realizing how to triumph over gods. Like my message tonight is about how few cross what I call the tetra fields. The tetra fields are Ra. Now Ra is of course the key component to Islam. Like Lemuria, all of those stories that nobody really wants to talk about, but were really going on here. The Naga, all of that. And now everything is, honestly, this is more like peace compared to what the activated humans and other beings were doing with each other. Imagine a cow, but in this case it's not domesticated, called an auroch, with an open pineal gland. Meaning a non-domesticated bovid or cow, which we eat now, with a pineal gland because of its massive nature. You see, so the dynamic of Earth was like what you would see in like one of these Lord of the Rings movies for a while. Like this was called glorious. There was only just the engagement between man and his animal nature and woman with their animal nature as they had fall down the ladder, meaning that the DNA was shattered because they attempted to perfect something that was already perfect. See, what's happening in this world is that that's why everyone just becomes, be glad at times you can still identify other individuals in the reality that are totally opposite to what you're doing, what you're like, if you're a good person. Meaning that sometimes you need this counterbalance to actually see whether you're still progressing or you're actually moving backwards. So there's one who has signed up for that role, meaning that, as the George Bush says, evil has found a willing servant. There are those who want to go headlong into the abyss just to see what's down there, just to show you don't go down there. And then many of those individuals that you're dealing with in the reality actually need to be pulled out because they're your brother and they need to be basically balanced out again. Nobody is going to get away from this. This would be like leaving your seed. This is why everything's always seemed to be funny on this reality and everything's always a joke. So to hide the sadness, because when we keep making these mistakes, we have to keep coming back to fix them. But here's the thing. What if I told you can activate an energy that's so immense it can fix the problems by the end of this year? See, people, they're not realizing what we're actually on the brink of, while they're still emotional and judging and stuff like that. What we're on the brink of is actually figuring out pure, free energy for all of humanity. Not for cars, not for buildings, It's game time for the inorganic fields. See, what lucid dreaming also is about, it's based on how far you can project your mind. We were talking about that earlier in the conversation today. You have to think big, baby. You have to see all of this stuff that you've been seeing with the Tron and with all these different movies and CGI and all this stuff as no more than just tools in the cabinet of your imagination and what you need to spray paint a future for this world that does not just continue in control. Now, people think that these people, these controllers, want to end this reality. They don't want to end this. They've been working a long time to get it to this level of control. But the last thing that has to happen is you see why there were so many cross-pollinating, we'll just call it that. Because now the children of the one who is mixed with the black man and the white man, the one who is mixed with the Chinese and the Cambodian or the Japanese, because the two parents hated each other, or the two parents hated the other sides of the family. They were on the other sides of DMZs. Do you think that there'll be any wholeness for the future of us if we can still consider another member of our species as being different than us in some type of way? Especially if that difference gives them some level of superiority in our minds? Meaning, if we're in a reality and they actually train us to be cold and callous is actually the way to get ahead, and then they're said to be the ones that are the most cold and callous, so they get ahead. Now our whole reality is turned upside down. Now good has become bad, like Michael Jackson. So what happens is that there's another level to this dynamic, which I like to take it step by step, though. Like, I'll take you through it. The melanin, let me tell you the secrets to the melanin. Because what happens with the person that's very melanated is a sun burning within. Okay? And this sun is very hot. It heats and burns with passion because of a covenant that was made with the entity that is now manifesting out in the reality as Isis, which comes under the form of a female black dog. What happens is that when a person drops into these lower frequencies, there are beings that already agreed that, hey, we're going to hold up the lower frequency. We're going to call that the netherworld. This is going to be basically the foundation, the primordial zone for everything. This is like before you build a building, you build this basement. And then that down there will hold up even to the highest height. So this is also what you have to see with how our dimensions are set up, is that there are things that are down in lower dimensions that if we're not jubilant and we're not into enlightenment, understanding, meaning that your light burns from within. You don't need an external light to give you some type of gratification and explanation of who you are. So if you don't have that and you go down into these lower frequencies, you get shrouded. So this is what happens in these physical realities, like when we're living now. It's called blinded by the light, where the sun becomes the greatest thing here. Meaning people go out in the morning, they see the sun, and then they see that energy and they see it externally. They don't see it inside of themselves, so that they can, what gets called by the Muslims, genuflect, meaning actually bounce the sun's energy off of you. And so that's what the melanin is capable of doing. It's capable of absorbing the energy and transmuting it. But the energy also is fire. What happened is, if you notice that the ancient traditions heavily relied on fire, while the new traditions relied on ice, i.e. Isis. The fire, of course, is obviously the Arab world. Ar means fire. Ar is also the name for the pentagram. So you're basically looking at a world of combustible, and this is good for you. You're looking at a world of combustible elements that are interacting on each other based upon colors that they keep emulating. And the only thing that they tend to do is attack their exact opposite. Like you're going into Photoshop and hitting Control I. You just keep you can see another opposite to any picture. And this is a magnetic thing. This is why I told you, man, this universe, it's got a nighttime to it. So obviously it's not all teddy bears. If you don't figure this out, it can seem to get very dangerous. You have to actually, at certain points, pull yourself out of the entire structure and be like, and observe it from there and see if you're being played. Because that's what I was saying about these tetrafields. Because the gods of this world who've had to track down, they say they've been tracking these beings around universes, the Orion constellation, etc. Just keep up this kind of confusion with everyone of a back and forth of a war god, and each person wants to evoke this war god to fight its battles. So throughout history, that's all you find, and it just keeps changing its name. So the reason why this becomes so important is If a person uses all their time and all their energy, even in their highest state, I'm not saying that you're doing this, but I'm saying the ones who are the most, say that they're the most devout. They're there every day, they're playing, they're tearing, they do this because this builds up the most energy. These individuals are hinging all of their energy on a being that I just call Tetra. And to understand the energy in its full extent cannot even be compressed within the conversation. But to me, it is a test. The ultimate test that if you came into full realization of self, would you then go back and separate yourself again? And this is something, by the way, we do every day, meaning that once you come into full realization of self, and then you build from there, meaning that you start eliminating all your conflictive ideas, and then you start thinking from that point, you can come up with these glorious ideas. And you can start to come into application of them. But when you allow your mind to be lowered into a continuous conversation or a continuous thought of if another part of the species is really not holding their own or causing a lot of problems, and it's because you're not at the control point. When you're at the control point, meaning that now all these beings are collapsed, you see them only as just chakras that were in confusion with each other until you compress them. Then you actually see everyone's purpose. Now, this, even from an introspection, you've become master of your own world. Like you only see now everything as something that was actually trying to instruct you into total realization of what you're experiencing. So if you, again, to answer the question, if you want to understand the difference between different colors on the planet, it's about the spectrum. And each person is just like a planet, each group of people is just like a planet. There's a positive side to them and there's a negative side to them. Also, during certain times as the constellation rolls across, the more higher beings saw Earth and its procession through the zodiac signs as only chapters in Earth's period, meaning that every dog has his day. And then after that, there's always after that. Now here's the thing. The after that is the whole component with Barack Obama, which I won't get into right now, and you know the rest of what they want to, they have to, I'm going to say want to, but they have to cook up for the American mind right now. The American mind is completely fertile. They've been watching all this Hollywood, all this TV, and obviously these same excuses about the economy are not going to work anymore. YouTube is on fire with every single type of free energy item you can think of. The Bilderbergers is completely exposed. Everyone is up in heyday. So everyone thinks, though, that the world is going to end, that this is now Armageddon. They don't understand that that's not how the earth works. Earth has been here for billions of years. When we went through the Iron Age, then there was another age. There was a golden age after that. The golden age, then the industrial age. Industrial age, now we have space age. Space age, where are we going next? Ether. We're going to the ether. Now you'll have one more spatial. And this is why I was saying it wasn't that hard to figure this out. If now we are in this physical reality and we have these couple components, what we're called 3D, what would it be to be the next D, according to their speak? Okay, to have control over the dream body, because that's another spatial. It's another vehicle that you can use to go in a different direction. And when you really want to see how complex this whole creation thing is, you start realizing that you're encapsulated into several of these very complex vehicles that actually have the ability to do massive things. One of them is keep you trapped. If you don't, the thing is that if you don't unlock its potential, it can only expand to the potential of what you can think. And that's where we all have to stay. And that's where also the key comes in with the ceiling, with hatred, also gods saying one's better than the other, etc. It's like a ceiling to where our energy really should be. And so I think it's a major point. But hopefully, brother, that gives you a good answer on that question on why it's playing out this time, that those from the Syrian constellation, etc., are still completely shallow as far as their feelings are concerned, but more inorganic. And why, again, the melanin dominant expresses more connection to the soul and more connection with the root and the family. Now, this also has a lot to do with the elements, that were used in composition through the composition of the entity itself. Meaning that you can obviously tell that there are a lot of mineral or root elements being used, and that's why the Sirius star seems non-melanated too. It's a ghost star, for better lack of words. The Hitler talks more about this and the individuals that were involved in that. But they were able to track their plight there. So you can see what their plight is. Their plight is they're losing life. They're seeking life. Now, I think the greatest individual, when they see a person actually seeks life, they'll try to find a cure for them to survive. And then they'll understand that any time, like if you get hungry right now, like after a while you start getting hungry, 3 or 4 days move in, you're hungry. What are you going to turn into? Now, what if I told you there are some people here in this world and some entities that vow that they'll never be hungry again? Meaning that they think that God turned his back on them. And this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Jews. Even though they got the whole story confused, it was something that another member of their party calls. There is a group of people building up so much energy at the gate of this world. And I guess we can get into this a little bit. See, if you see the major superpowers, if you want to know what's really going on, you got to go right to the control point. What is this marching around a cube? What is this wailing at a wall with a black cube on the forehead? What does that really mean? Like, can you crack that? And so I cracked into it, and I locked into how religion calls so much accumulation of dark field energy. And that energy comes from people believing that something else is supposed to save them, or something else is supposed to rectify their sins and get them into heaven. And that's why I said the sins of the people darkened the Kaaba. The stone was white but then became black. What they're saying is that people believing that they can lay their sins onto something or lay their responsibilities onto something has become darkened and is accumulating a large amount of dark energy. So I was like, well, what are they doing with it? And then that's when I locked into what the secret societies were really doing with this dark energy that they have channeled throughout. They can channel throughout the earth by their manipulation of the ley lines and their Cleopatra's needles, which function as like acupressure points, moving energy around, bringing objects from the netherworld or Egypt or lower Egypt into other parts of the United States and getting that energy profaning there. I started to see basically them working a large level of ritual and mysticism over the planet. And I said, this is immense. Like, surely if I'm coming into realization of this, then obviously, it says a lot about, maybe I'm supposed to do something about it. See, some people, they would think something different. They would think like, shoot, this is too much for me. I'm out of here. It's too big. I guess I better get on their side. I'm thinking like, look, if I'm supposed to know all this means I'm supposed to do something about this, because we can't do this again. This seems like something that we've done over and over again. And then now when I'm looking at the small details, it always comes about by us thinking that we weren't originally created to function in a unit. Meaning that at some point we're going to have to bring this thing together. I believe it's coming now. I believe that it's actually not even so much as coming now, it's already here. There's a lot of people that I communicate with, and there is a consistent level of information that we are all sharing and coming into at the same time without one person saying that, I found out this. It's all leading to certain things. The other thing about the information, it has no side talk, meaning it's not a God. It doesn't need any rectification and bowing down and all that. It's like, here's the truth. Do what you do. It's boiling down to your vehicle. Meaning there's a consistent level of information that keeps coming across from our sources that are saying, this is what it is. It's still about you. Like, you have to see what you do. You have to see what you take in. You have to understand how your heart's pushing out. Sometimes the first battle has something to do with your courage, but that means definitely the second battle is going to have something to do with how well you can love. That each of your chakra systems are oscillating in war with each other, planet-sized wars. You see fallout and everything, but you can bring that in balance within, and then it starts to rectify the environment that's actually around you. The thing is that we're in the process of it actually happening. This is a great point. But some people will rather be when it already happened. And those are the people who don't want to do any work. And those are the people that are going to continuously see, because that's what magic really is. Magic is a system that was created that's like gambling. You're trying to gain or get something that you didn't even work for before you even deserve it. So it's always going to lead to disaster because it's premature. You see, so all of the Harry Potter and all those whole ideas of grasping something from ancient levels of teachings, and Hitler marching across the mountain to gather the books from Tibet, and them searching for the Holy Ark in Lower Egypt and bringing out the pyramids, all that stuff, unless you have the age and the wisdom and the knowledge in order to do it, you only create more of a situation that, guess what? The children end up fixing. See, people can't write the end of the story. They don't see how, in the beginning, you look at it from a pyramidal type level, it had to exist that way. If I go back to your grandmother, her grandmother, her grandmother, her grandmother, I'm eventually get back to a small village of people. If I keep going back, I'm eventually get back to one being. It's something that's in mathematics. It's not in somebody's hocus pocus and magical stuff. So this means that we were all together. Now, if you look at the story closely, you'll find that the greatest problem started coming about when we populated to a degree where we wanted to separate and divide from each other, meaning that we got on each other's nerves. So what happens is that then here's another thing. Like, so you can, to tell you the truth, I couldn't even go through this whole complex conversation of how humanity evolves. It's interesting. And those kind of thoughts, honestly, you should put yourself to sleep on. That's another major key within lucid sleep, is to go through some type of level of story where you're creating detail before you go to bed. Just the same one. And the best one is the creation story. Still realizing that when you do this and you go into sleep, it just picks up from there. But again, I don't understand the benefits of the lucid dreaming. And that's why when people were just looking at the lucid dreaming like a PlayStation, it wasn't giving it the credit. That's what I'm saying is that when we oftentimes look at things just in this way that the world is saying, oh, this is what it is. You can go in and you can control your dream and do whatever you want. Someone's like, oh, okay, great. I'm going to go do what I want. And that's exactly how they sound. But the reality is that you have to see everything that you approach that's new for its new potential. You can't put it into the same frequency that you're into. And that, again, I think is one of the biggest things that we've delivered today in this conversation, to see that we can take the best thing, then send it through our filters. And if our filters are dirty, then we see it as something that is distorted and dank and divided. And this was also known by seeing through two eyes. You notice 2 is a dualistic number. So you see everything in reality through 2 eyes. So how would it not be hard-coded dual? Especially when you live in a reality that has a day and a night dual. Okay. And then so now there's this black man and a white man. Okay, dual. So now when you sit back in or up in the Arabat, meaning in the highest state of consciousness, the kether of yourself, and you sit back up there and you're like, man, look, I'm telling you, you're down there on the dual plane. They're playing the dual game on you. They got Deuce, the god, who's Zeus. You got them battling like a yin and yang. You got one saying they're right, he's really white. Then you got the other one saying he's right, he's black. They're both absence of color. There's only 7 colors in the spectrum of the prism. Everybody's forgetting that there was original light shine through the prism first. We should probably see what that is. There's also a big dynamo in the sky pushing out an unlimited amount of energy that if for some reason it goes away, everything's going to get really crazy. So I need to know who that is. Start asking the real questions. This is how you get on the astral quest. The astral quest is within yourself. It's the innerverse. And the answers will come up because the universe still functions like that. It's like this big, I don't even want to give it the term supercomputer because it's not inorganic. But the thing is that when you start really spitting out and you want to know the right questions, now when you get the answers, you're holding the frequency to those answers. Let me show you the keys to this. Now you're holding this frequency of quote unquote truth, higher truth. So it's very difficult to hold the frequency of higher truth and not become higher truth. You see what I mean? And then at certain points, there's an over the hill point where you start realizing, okay, wait a minute. All right, I know where I'm at. Okay, I'm awake. I wonder how long I've been asleep. Okay, what is it this time? What's the deal this time? And then you make the story from there. Oh, okay, you're here on Earth. It's obviously, 2012, they're expecting a major transition, but there's not much going on, not much moving and shaking. What's going on? Oh, there's a moonopoly on the religion through monotheism. There's some type of refractor, meaning something is blocking the light between people and the original level of themselves. I think the term they use is called evangel or angel, someone who's supposed to convert the energy of this entity they're calling God into something that they can actually communicate with. Okay, we got an error because that's a short circuit. This is how you have to look at the entire situation, meaning that all we've been experiencing and our ancestors have been experiencing is somebody explaining to them what the totality really is. It's now time for us to see it. And then guess where you're going to see it? And it's not outside. This is also the key. Here's the key to the soul. You've never seen your soul with your two eyes because it's not outside, it's inside. And so you only can meet it inside. And so that's why the entire dimension is just wired like, hey, look at me, I'm outside. And it's as simple as that. This becomes the core secrets to the world. So when you start shutting the doors, they call this like cutting these tubes that are connected to you, if you can see them on the astral plane. You start cutting these tubes of things that are feeding energy. As I told you spend energy like currency every day. They start cutting these tubes. And then you start to retain more of the energy and the chakra wheels start coming back on. Then now when the wheel comes on, the entire information disk of the biorhythm of you connected to that light or that spectrum comes on. And this, of course, is the challenge because now you have to you're coming into full realization. So most people, they open up the lower chakras first. So the lower chakra has everything to do with the fire, the world, what's been happening to a child when they're younger. All of that starts to come up. And this is like a heat and it's a fire and a passion, but actually it's an anger, excuse me. And as that anger starts to come up, if one has understand how to channel this energy properly, they use this anger and everything that's happened in the past to them to actually drive the reason why they're going to activate now. Meaning not allowing yourself to go into another world where you come into it as like a child and you have to have someone that can take care of you, and then sometimes they don't take care of you properly. So,
Sevan, can I call a couple of people in?
Sure.
Because some people are eager to ask questions. So I'm just gonna call a couple of people in now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Kenrick wants to ask you another question whilst let's see. So go ahead, Kenrick. I think you need to turn the mic on.
Yeah, but I certainly feeling what you're saying about the astrological principles. I mean, in the Brahmin tradition as well as Kemet, where you were born, the time and date and time had a bearing on your personality and your purpose in life. And whilst you don't condone it, when you have certain anger based on history, for example, the 4th century Holocaust or slavery, segregation, colonialism, apartheid, the anger is understandable. Well, not just, and perhaps somewhat justified given the horror of that experience. But I certainly agree that love is certainly the principal healing power, and shouldn't we be concerned with healing the community based on drugs and gang culture and guns and imprisonment. But also wanted to ask you, I mean, a normal would catch me on occasion flicking through Ebony magazine or Upscale or something like that and go crazy, you know. And they say some of these guys are probably adepts too. But where do we go from here? I mean, do we just sit in the ghetto and light a candle, as I was joking with my brother with, or what was our vision for us as a people? What is our purpose once you become an adept or become activated? Where do you go? We can't all sit in our rooms and eat healthy and meditate and study. There has to be certainly a larger vision. Do you have that for your supporters out there? And give us some more ideas on that. What is your vision for us once you become adepts or become activated?
For sure. Let me just turn this mic down real quick here. Just to get excessive level feedback here. But so first of all, we need to get very clear what we're talking about with activation. activation is not some. I mean, like, when you see an activated person, you'll know it because the level of energy is immense. Like the energy itself is not something that's just like, oh, I'm activated, and then you can walk around and go to the supermarket or whatever. That's why the activation energy has the.
You're breaking up again, Sevan. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, I'm getting some type of feedback on the line. Do you want to reset the line? Oh, okay. Yeah, I think someone is added to the. I think someone's added to the line. So.
Back, yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I think we had two people on the line there, so it probably just pulled it down a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. He said that he muted himself, but he was listening, and I've cut him off. So let me get him in again, please, because they are eager to ask questions. Kevin's taking up the mic.
I'm done.
No. I would definitely want to answer the question because I mean it's important. Like first of all, it's not a game to me at all about the activation as far as what it really entails. It's actually really the thing that has to be done at this point. That's why this is really one of the last lines of if you want to call it defense, meaning that this whole situation has gone on long enough. Like humanity's level of degradation at this point is reaching extreme limits. Humanity and their souls that exist here are being suggested to do things that are definitely going to take them down into a deeper path in a lower vibration. So what happens is the activated humans step in from a level not from like, okay, let me go take a couple Etherium Golds and see if I can meditate a couple of times on my balcony to lose some weight or something. That'll work. Like I said, it's still gonna be able to answer even the person's just regular levels of what they want to do for themselves. But the real potential in this, which has already been seen, is actually in a person that can heal and people that can heal the world in a very short period of time, because the levels of energy that they display is shocking. And this is already talked about through different texts. It's the only thing that actually shocks these powers into saying, okay, it's time to lay down arms. Because remember, inside of the Cabal, they know what they're doing. So you have to go into their mind too. That's why I said this is wholeness. They know what they're doing, but what they've attached themselves to is an energy that is basically got them at its service. And so the only thing, and these are like your mother and father trapped dealing with this being. Some people have family members that have been in religion and stuff, and so they need to stop acting like they don't need to figure out why is the religion holding their aunts and uncles and grandparents and stuff like that, and what is really in the Cabal or the cable, which is also known to be something that can hold a person by the leg. So again, I'm getting a lot of reverb. I think we may have to not add that many people to the conversation, but okay. So just to get through to this, so that people understand that the activation it takes the individual that is really in their mind, they actually, mind, body, and soul, that they actually want to do this. It tests them first on all those levels. The abilities are already there, meaning that this is not something that is so hard to do and is impossible, etc. It's readily accessible for the individual that puts themselves through the right types of situations. Those situations it's just common sense. I'm not talking about some occult ritual or anything like that. It's common sense. One, you are what you eat. You can't eat the blood. There's a lot of other things that tie into that. You were given the trees and you were given the fruit. Two, your air. You have to understand how air is, it's free. So it was given to you by, if you want to call it the higher creation, higher being, whatever. So you have to understand what that gift really is. Because you can take air into your body and it opens up other channels. Okay? So the next thing is that still see you're in a plethora of information on the web and on the rest of the physical reality. So what you do in the physical reality and how much time you spend accessing that kind of information does say a lot to your subsequent bodies to have as how persistent you are about getting into this activation. Because notice how this works like this. There's many of your bodies, quote unquote, that are just waiting to see the activity from you. They've been hearing you thinking about it. oh yeah, I'm gonna stop doing this. It's like your shadow. You're teaching your shadow based on every action that you make, but your shadow is being taught by you, meaning that how your shadow ends up acting later on is going to be because of what you taught it. Now, for people who don't like to reflect with their shadow, think of it as a child. If you have a child in this world, how you treat your child and raise your child and what you do is going to govern how your child grows up, because it's going to become a byproduct of what you're doing. So it's the same thing with your spiritual bodies, which we start to ignore. And so this activation, it's very serious because it's specific to exactly what the person is going to need to do in their nucleus to cause the activation within their nucleus, because each person acts as orgone. And this is not look at very precisely the knowledge. Now, when you get the information that's the truth, you begin to correct your DNA. It starts to correct your DNA because your DNA is information. The junk DNA would be then junk information. So when you get the truth, it will replace the junk information. Now your DNA is changed. So this, if you were looking at the aura, you would see certain fields begin to become brighter on the individual. Now, what you will also see is when that individual goes into like a mall or a place like that and their field is spinning, when they stand next to a person, then they start to spin inside of this other person's field. This other person's field then picks up only one bit, if you want to call it, one bit, which contains the complete information of each person's auric field, of the information that now contains the portion of corrected DNA. Then that, all DNA does is copy and replicate. So now it takes that in and copies and replicates. Okay. Now, the reason why, of course, I had to figure that out was because of just how negative energy affects us also. In what we're taught to take in and what music we're listening to, etc. But it also applies on the positive level. So, and then also if you understand orgone and how orgone works and crystals, and the crystal's connection with the purest levels of the color when it hits the spectrum, then you also can pull connections from that too. So this activation, it can really reach every single level of thought, but only in the highest sectors of thought. So even if you're not a thought-based person and you're just dealing with the earth, we can show you right from the earth within a couple words what this energy does. But realistically, most people that really work with the earth, they already know about the energy. What they're waiting on still is higher vibratory energy. Remember, there's people already working with their hands. They're in some countries, they're already digging, they're setting up communities. They have a certain level of energy that they're holding already, a frequency. The only thing that they need is other brothers and sisters to join in building that frequency. Then what is this? It's an organic net. It's not an artificial heart-generated net, but it actually functions underneath those nets. This is what a real resistance is, a place that can get to you on the ground, not in the air. This is why they also make everyone's God in the air. He's in the sky. He's in heaven. He's on a mountain. Everywhere but where you're at, right? So that you can see the gimmick, and that's why I say I spend hours talking about, the whole the diaboli and the diabolicalness that's been set up on the earth as men and women keep getting fooled, and the continuous ensuit of that. Or I can talk about the activation and how many individuals have already began to expand not only in this dimension but in dimensions beyond. Meaning that what's actually happening is a lot of the creations that you've seen that have still assisted this world were not done by everyone. They were done by one or two people. And now everyone is enjoying things based on that invention. It's always like that. That's why I say we function as a unit, because any fertile tree spends most of its time with its seeds not completely ripe, right? So that's the same thing happening in the world. The world is abundant right now. It shows abundance because things keep growing. But that's also happening with the population. But most of it's still in its needing to get fully mature stage. So those of us that do become fully mature, the ones at the top of the tree, they always say the ones that are most exposed to the sunlight, get mature in order to allow these other people, places, things, etc., on the dimension to get their level of maturity without being disturbed from that. Meaning that right now, it's still accessing us, this world is accessing us to do something. It's not just asking to you to know the story. It's also saying, hey, get up, man, I'm hurting, but I took care of you. See, it's almost like a test in your own, if you see it on small, simple levels, it's like a test of your own nature. Because it's like, look, I fed you, like the earth did feed us when we were babies. You know, we were there eating from the fruit. Everything that's here was generated from this earth. And then now something's happening to me. Like I got all these other cats. They're doing this other things. Other kids of mine, you know, I can't really do that much to them because they're still my kids, but maybe you guys can work it out. You can just play this out like a regular story. And then you start to see that the ones that embrace where they are, like nature, every single thing that we're using is pulled from nature. The trees make a crippled man climb trees. The trees make a person completely healthy when they're sick. And now, of course, they've taken and demonized that and made it into these pills. But all those chemicals and things came from the trees first. So you can also see how the reality, and this is another thing of where's the bright side? It's the bright side. The entire reality was already configured that it would be literally like a garden. The only thing is that something convinced us to start getting in conflict. And now, to chime in on what you said earlier about the anger is understandable, I would have to say that there is no understanding in anger. Have you ever been really angry? There's only anger there. Like, I mean, just as the person said in the song, you have to lay like a young soul down on the ground, and then you're wondering why this has happened. And then, you know, the whole thing gets blurry after that. So basically, those people will never be in a position to be able to govern fully of what's going on here. Now they're seeing through a certain filter. It's not saying who's right, who's wrong, whether they're good, they're bad, they should be doing it, should not be doing it. Like, that's a whole nother dynamic. That's now based on, you know, more of emotional stuff. But let's now say, okay, wait a minute. Where are the heroes? Where are the companions? Where are the riders of the light? Where are all the rest of these comic book creatures that they created to help do something about the world when it's dealing with the beast? But first, the battle begins inside. This is the interesting part, because you can go run out there and try to attack them and totally get knocked out. So the reality is that just to show you, hey, the battle is not outside. It's actually within. And also, guess what? That's where it ends. See, there's just certain people that need to go back inside and finish it inside. And then the reality sees the results of it. Things are not being controlled from here. This is the play out. This is why you can actually keep yourself from dying in this world, from your dream world. You dream about something that you need to avoid, and then in reality, something suggests you should go the other way. But that was like 5 or 6 days ago, because there's a time delay to this reality. So where's everything controlled? Now you see the keys to getting in more of you see why the importance of the keys to getting in more of the vehicles that are closer to where you are on the timeline. I mean, closer to, again, faster vehicles is what I'm saying. Using your mental body first, learning that, then using the spirit body, then to get into the more organic fields. But again, that has to be another entirely different conversation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Sevan, yeah. We've got Samuel on the line as well. He wants to ask you a couple of questions. Okay. If Samuel, you want to unmute and ask him a question?
Yeah. I wanted to thank you for that phenomenal start, sort of just really waking up and pumping. So I have 2 questions. I guess you can take your pick or see if you want to answer both. The first question I have is, a few times you've equated Jesus and Apollonius of Tyana as being the same being, and this is important to me because I have a lot of family who are kind of caught up with, as you say, this being, you know, Tetra you've called it, or the Tetragrammaton, or Jehovah, or you know, it goes through its permutations in different cultures, but basically they seem to kind of have indebted themselves to this thing. And then you get someone like the Messiah showing up in the New Testament, or this new version of what was once old. And he just looks like an activated human to me. And, you know, looking deeper into what Apollonius of Tyana was into, it's like alchemy and hermetic knowledge. And that all seems to be about sort of evolution as well. Would you say that that's the way that we can go about kind of bringing people into a higher understanding of it and freeing them from a kind of prison which they seem to have gotten themselves into with this sort of
For
guilt
sure.
and
For sure. I mean,
yeah.
great question. I mean, it's definitely very. I'm not sure if my line sounds a little hollow, but I'm sure I'm coming through clear. But it's very, very imperative for us to also come up with solutions of how to walk people out of situations. Like, instead of staying on one side or other and just saying, hey, look, if you believe in that, then it's not going to work for you. It's never going to work for you. Goodbye. Like, you definitely don't want to leave a person in that situation. That's not what a bridge builder does. So what I see is that originally, I wanted to actually answer your question directly, just as far as the question itself, before I got into the entire story of the anointed Isu. But it really boils down to what we talked about in the conversation earlier today about when you finally do achieve the energy, what kind of person you are ultimately governs how it acts out from there, like what frequency you convert it into. And so you'll find definitely in the documents of the Isu, it's basically a Venusian tradition. And this is why Rome and Venus and Amor is the son of Venus, comes into play, because you'll find out that the archangels or the angels, Michael, Raphael, Uriel, etc., are the archons. They are the cherub that God rides on. And this makes a logical sense because obviously God uses the angels and commands them to go do things. Cherubim act as elevators at times as far as getting people to talking to this entity. What you're finding is that these are the elder brothers. Their plight with the planet, which is they've made a lot of children, and they have different races, different colors, different creeds that they've been involved in, that their genetics is passing through. And this keeps a drama, which is the root to the word dragon mother, but this is a drama that is continuously playing out on Earth, where everyone just kind of stays with the story that's being written in the sky under the celestial dragon of Draco. So, and then Sirius, Big Five, by way of Venus, and the moon as a refractor, and then Saturn as communications, and, just basically an array of a world. Like what we wake up and exist in every single day, but where it's really started first. So the next level, of course, seems to be where people are locked into that they can't create a world. And this, of course, is a perfect question for today's conversation, because you can see the whole idea of why you would need to go to some other being and ask it for the assistance of where you're going to go when you die, and some of the things that you feel like you can't get accomplished on your own is would create an impediment, but also is, again, an extreme level of our immaturity. Because it still shows that we'll go outside looking for something else that is truly inside, which was the original scriptures of any individual that came across as a Messiah type individual, which was, again, there's no documentation that Jesus was walking. And Apollonius was definitely walking around, and there was many others like Apollonius in the Nazarite motif. That's why Jesus is Jesus of Nazareth, because Nazarite motif is long hair. It's the highest member in the order of the Sanhedrin. So this is also someone who's going into the prophecy of trying to go into the prophecy of the Messiah. However, you'll find a huge switch with the story they choose to play in the original story of the Messiah, because the Messiah was in fact a warrior. Like the whole Messiah tradition comes from Krishna. It comes from Krishna coming and beating the crap out of all of the dark gods. So at that point, that's what people were expecting when they were expecting another Messiah to come and rid them of the plagues of evil. So what happens here is that when it's transferred into the Western tradition, it actually becomes an individual that is a pacifist, which I'm now coming to the understanding is also tied into Julius Flavius and all of the Caesars, really a whole group of Isus or Messiah types that just wish to reign on earth as God, as a lord, which is actually the correct term. There's lords in Britain today, but reigning on earth as the king. And this way they can absorb the priesthood. But there has to be a step-by-step play to do that. And Jesus is another one of those components in order to get it complete. I believe, again, most people are not as intelligent enough to catch the whole story, to read the whole story before they get caught up in some emotional bag about something that brushed them very briefly in the night, or something that they believe was healed by some invisible force, when in fact it was generally healed through them raising their frequencies and desiring to see that come to pass. So it's very clear what those forces are really about. And what I can see is, instead of going at the people with it at this point, instead of trying to get them to see it because they're veiled, so how could they see anything? You need to go right at the source of the situation, which is where we're really working with it. And we work with that through frequency. Overall, when you bombard their frequency with a higher frequency, they have no choice but to desist. So that's really how it's really taken place, instead of, like I said, trying to wake up these people who don't have time to sit through the entire mega saga of the Holy Roman Empire, backdoored into the Elizabethan Empire, and then turned into the going into Kush. And then, because you got to remember, like, see, there's a connection here with these whole Messiah stories that also it shows you the dominion. See, the dominion, that's why they worship on Sunday, is about people still giving up their energy and worshiping something. Because if you see how this whole Messiah culture traces back, you find that the king was often associated with being the Messiah. That's why they called him the King of Kings. So what you're really getting into is the same thing of where earlier humanity was intruded upon by older brothers that were displaying to them activation. Okay, now look at this, Samuel. They were displaying to them activation, basically. Now look what I can do with the Ankh rod, look what I can do with this, and I'm throwing electricity, we got lightning bolts, we got craft. Okay, so pause right there, and then fast forward all the way to right now. And you'll find the exact same thing still playing. But now just a story. Now these beings are not even here anymore. And there's a story still echoing that there is one external that has accomplished all these things. And then everyone looks to it as the sun. And then because the sun is on the outside, somehow this logically means to people that the sun is not on the inside. And then this whole thing continues to ensue. So that's also why when you try to explain this to someone for a moment, they may be like, okay, I see what you're saying. But by the next day, as the sun rises again, a program is trying to reload itself and say, oh, well, no, the sun is the risen God. It's the risen Savior Jesus. And then they killed the sun. And then, that's why now we all have to work. So there's basically this whole program that loads every time the person sees certain symbols that they've associated with certain words. You see? Like, because notice how if you're a Christian, the word sun is synonymous to you with Jesus. So then on the subconscious level, when you look at the sunshine in the sky, you subconsciously connect that with Jesus. So if someone actually tells you that Jesus is not the sun, then you want to fight them and tell them, yeah, he is. But look what you're saying. Because in a minute, now here's how deep it is. If Jesus was a real person, let's say, then he actually was the sun, because everyone is a piece of the sun. So they're not really lying. They're just not telling the whole truth. You see what I mean? And this is what they call the forked tongue. So notice how there's an emphasis, especially in the Talmud, on the one who's causing a lot of trouble speaks with a forked tongue, meaning that it sounds so close to the truth, but then the rest of the information is not there. This is also where most people that are calling themselves adept have to make sure they're not doing. I take people to the control point first. That's how this conversation started. Here's what you need to do for yourself. Now, as far as story time, because we're storytelling people, let's pull up close by the fire and let me tell you about the ancient times when Xerxes was running around the planet acting all crazy, and his brother Ra and all the rest of the Anunnaki, and then how these people are still evoking these energies. Now, here's the part they don't like to be talked about. If you really dig deep into Islam, you're really devout, you're a real submitter, and you have the prostration mark on your head, then at some point you run into a sharif. And then a sharif is a person who can really control the spirits that wander throughout the desert with the names that come out of the Quran. So if he's kind enough to tell you names that come out of the Quran. And I have a reverb going on here. So
someone's called in and they've still got their radio on. Just get them to turn it off.
Okay. So again, this would be then.
Vanette, could you turn your radio off, please, or the
just mute it.
Just mute your line until you're ready to talk.
And the reason why I want to bring this point up. Okay. Let me see.
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Okay. The reason why I want to bring this point up is because there's a whole army for better lack of words, of people who don't even know what's going on inside of the religion that they're worshiping. They don't even know what's going on inside of there. So this creates basically a buffer from the truth anyway. So with all of these traditions, whether it's the story of Jesus, whether it's the story of Muhammad, whether it's a story, you won't never have that story anyway, because there's a whole buffer of people who don't even know the story but are willing to lay down their life for it. And so this gets into, so I guess that's your first question. So just to understand that you're dealing with it, the way that it has to be dealt with is not really talking back and forth, unless you know that your family member is someone who listens to reason. But talking back and forth with them about the situation is definitely not going to get it solved. It's more easier for you to reserve that energy and to start perfecting your field more, and then just sit next to them. I mean, at this point, because of how much that means to, because remember we talked about earlier in this conversation, something's always trying to change your frequency. So if you're working on staying on this harmonic frequency where you're building a lot of energy, especially once you understand the bioenergetics, then you're starting to think, well, you can clearly see it's just a play to try to get you out of your energy. Someone just coming to you and say, hey, I don't believe what you're doing is the truth. It's like, I mean, so that's also where this ego thing comes in at, because if you get offended by that, then
also where this ego thing comes in at, because if you get offended by
so
I'm really sorry about this, Sevan.
that's all right.
Could you read the line, please, Pleasant?
So let's go with the next question, Samuel. So hopefully
to
that
speak to you, Sevan.
I might have to just do one radio show where people do a Q&A. No, seriously, Sevan, honestly, I think you should come on the show again, and we should just literally dedicate the whole show to Q&A, because a lot of people are really like,
eager to ask you questions.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, I'm definitely up for it. I'm definitely going to have to probably wrap things up here within the next 30 minutes, just so I can go do some baby time. And but yeah, I mean, you could see how the more that we have this conversation, the easier that it'll become to get out the massive level of information.
There was some technical
Can
difficulties.
someone...
Can you mute the line, please, Pleasant? Thank you.
Okay.
That's Sevan, yeah?
Yeah, I just removed him from the conversation. They'll probably just fix it and then call right back in.
Yeah.
Okay, Samuel, did you have a second question, or so you can understand? Okay, so just to finish it now. Hold on, real quick.
Sometimes I feel.
Hold on, real quick. I just want to finish it so people understand exactly what we were saying, because the original question was the association between Jesus and Apollonius of Tyana is because now once that these individuals who are obviously the members of the Pythagorean order of death, who carry the pentagram upside down, which is called the brack or the plow sign. So this particular cult decided that they would capitalize on the story of Dammuz, who Dammuz is the child of Semiramis and Nimrod. And it runs somewhat of a strange crucifixion story, but it's not exactly like the Christian one, but it's similar enough. And so what they started doing was passing out some of the occult novels that they had already obtained from the Eastern world in regards to a master deity that they knew to be the king of all demons. And this became known as Agatha demon, or Abraxas, meaning 365, an angel that stands on every single day of the year. So you see this amulet oftentimes, especially in Enroll. I mean, it's all over the internet. But what you're dealing with is that people started to get tired of, you got to use this demon to cast out this demon, and this angel to do this, and this angel. So they were trying to consolidate the whole thing. And they created this concept that there would be one grand being of them all. And this is also the root to the stories of these crucified saviors, etc., is that it's an actual testament or a redemption process taking place where they're basically bringing the same old religion underneath what appears to be a new character, but is actually the same thing again. So you have to be, very careful that you can't see that once it starts to become an old story, because people are tired of hearing about Jehovah in the Old Testament, getting all upset. Then they're like, okay, we need to create exactly opposite. This is called a double bind. This is when they already think about what you're going to go and do next. So I guess that person hasn't figured out how to mute their line, so I just removed them again. But this means that again, that the double bind you have to be careful of, because it's almost like out of the frying pan into the fire. Many people thought they escaped Islam and then found Christianity, only to find that there's the exact same thing going on in the background. And this is that. But notice the problem still comes from within, because it's the idea of going to something else to cure and to fix your problems, when it's really you inside, especially the individuals around you. Because remember, all the individuals around you are also cosmic representations of the actual energies that are present in your life at this moment. So if you just pay attention to what's going on around you, you don't have to go all the way out to some, again, temple or something somewhere. You can get the most expansion from fixing those situations. So that should finish that question. Apollonius is definitely connected to the Pythagorean order, and they were spreading the knowledge of numbers and the pentagram, converting people's languages to numbers all around the world, and so that they can implement their next level of system through mathematics. That's what you're dealing with.
Wow. Yeah. So thanks a lot for answering that question. That's great. I think your answer also kind of made the second question obsolete, insofar as my question was about abilities and talents, which I feel like I have, but I really felt like concentrating on just healing the situation with whichever means are available will just get the energy flowing in the right way, and it'll become clear through common sense. Would you agree with that?
For sure. I mean, Sevan, you've been definitely in this long enough. We've been following this whole quest for quite some time, and we can definitely see where the mission really accompanies the energy levels, and it's just from there, it's just figuring out and getting more of the information about exactly what's going on, and then that kind of gives the details to what we need to be doing, and then you find exactly what is specific to you. As I said, everyone has their own thing that they're doing, and actually the interesting part about it is you're already doing it. Sometimes it's just when you maximize something, you can see more of it. So sometimes you don't, if you really want to know where your gift is, and that's for everyone on this line, it's something that you're already doing, but it's sometimes on such a minuscule level you don't even recognize it. So when you maximize with higher levels of energy, it just makes what you are amplified, and it starts to bring out a great deal of what has been more or less the subtle or forgotten part of who you really are. And what we're dealing with here is that we're very similar to children waking up. We've been in a reality with clearly more advanced beings. There's several components on top of our situation, but the good part is that we're here, we're breathing, we're reasoning, and we need to take it from here. The other thing is stop going into the past or to the netherworld. That's why they love to spread this netherworld stuff around everywhere. If you look into the womb, you're going to see darkness. So, I mean, why expect to see something else when you look in there? But you understand that that's the material in which everything grows out of. If you want to know its real place. So, trust me, notice it's the dookie that most of these plants are growing out of and these flowers are growing out of. So let's act like we can't see the as below, so above nature to exactly what that means. That means this way of behaving, and at times this very vulgarness in the reality starts to produce these individuals that don't see that that's the frequency they need to partake with anymore. And then they start to work on finding other frequencies that are more habitable, and they start to spread those frequencies into the reality. Then when the person is giving the choice, again, they always choose the better frequency. Like if you ask a person and you have the real keys to the knowledge, and you ask a person, do you want the knowledge or do you want to be ignorant? Come on, man, is that a trick question? So still realize what you're into here. It's for people, they will definitely choose to expand themselves. The real thing that's going on here, though, is that a lot of the knowledge has not been put out, not only in the proper way, but also things have been omitted. Some people have not looked into every arena. I've looked into spirituality. I've looked into frequency, looked into cymatics, colors, shapes, art. You look into every single major information field of the world and just skim across the top. And when you'll start seeing the exact layout of everything. And so that's the only thing that we're really doing now, is working to put that information together so that people can understand it better. I tend to like to use pictures and things, and we can do that next time, because there's another stream channel that I have connected, especially if you have some people that have some questions, because I can show them all of this stuff. It's not just like you hear me talk about it. I can show you the bioenergetic fields, and I can show you where you can access this stuff and buy the magnets that are necessary to do what needs to be done. This is just not, side research. This is priority. And that's, That's what it is for now. Like, honestly, to tell you the truth, I'm always expanding. There's like right now when I hang out, there's a couple more things that I need to go do that are already expanding into other fields. I got new work, new research. I'm applying certain things. It's massive. So what else will we do in immortality? I just need to get people to ask themselves sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you very much for that, Samuel. We've got Tony, who's awaiting. He's been waiting for a long time now. Then we've got peace, blessings to come in.
Okay.
Also, a couple of other callers. So, Tony, if you would like to come and ask Sevan a question, please. Thank you.
Sevan, once again, thanks for your great work, mate. You're a diamond, true diamond.
Oh, thanks.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, Sevan, can you hear Tony?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, more to the entities and obviously the other realms. What you were just talking with Samuel. Sort of a two-part question, really, because it's to do with dreams as well. The likes of psychedelics, DMT, and mushrooms. I have never witnessed entities in the realms that it's thrown me into. Where would you put that realm within psilocybin and dimethyltryptamine? And why wouldn't I have seen entities if they're so sort of prolific within the multiverses, as it were?
Good question. It's definitely because of, how this really works, especially with the psychedelics, is that you will see an entity if you're actually in an area where the entity is. So let's say, for instance, you take some psychedelics and you're in the forest, and there happens to be one of those forest entities there, and you go in, you'll see it because of the third eye. The third eye is being messed with even just a little bit, and that thing is already there. You can normally not see it with two eyes, but now because the third eye is slightly open, you can see it. Okay. But when you go into, let's say, just a park or at the house, what happens is that those fields are policed. Like, it's like the Men in Black run around out there. They don't let just any dark entity run around, only the ones that are going and coming based on the instructions that they've been given. So you won't see these basically entities just hanging out in the corner of your house. They've basically been exterminated. Where you'll see these entities is in the areas that have still been governed to be their areas. And this is why we still have these regions on our planet where there's a border. And if you don't have the right paperwork, you can't cross into that country. I learned this because a gentleman that I had talked to a while back was saying that, he was into this whole thing with magic, and he had these spirits that he was bringing from Africa in pots. And I was, I was definitely getting out of this guy's way. In fact, the guy that actually introduced me to him was like, man, there's this guy.
Yeah,
he can make it.
I've got this is another thing. We're having where I live locally. There's quite a few of us, about 15 of us, get together on a few times a year, and they're magicians and all sorts, to be honest. But they're still summoning entities in. Which is, a worry for me. I mean, like I say, when you've answered the question earlier, it seems that I've had a pass to sort of get out and beyond the normal construct, whereas a lot of people would be given entities to be put up with. I mean, I know a lot of people that have done, been on ayahuasca, had really terrible trips, had to really face, their egos, and it was more traumatic for them than so I think that I've managed to skip a boundary there, or one of the universes. I didn't have anything stopping me at the gate, and it was like everything just came flooding in. I could have as much as I wanted of it from the universe. It was giving me everything, but I couldn't bring it back here. That was part of the package deal that I was. It's like going on holiday. It's like a package deal. You can see it all, but you can't bring anything back. It's duty free, mate. It's quite funny you should mention that.
Yeah, I mean, if the astro line is, or astrohydrine, which is the person doesn't have a bunch of tag-along energies, then there's really nothing to see. Realistically, in introspection, there's only just more feeling. There's not so much as an actual external or even a hyperdimensional entity to be there unless there's a ritual taking place. You see what I mean? And that's really how it works. Yeah. Like everyone that has...
For me, it's just like a sensation of isness. Is the only way I can describe it. You're at all and one with everything. You are a part. You are the everything. So it's. I think this is. I hope this is what we're coming to when we can actually manifest and create at will. But I mean, that's a dangerous game to play. Look at what they're doing with it already in the world. You know what I mean?
For sure. I mean, it's still also what they're doing with it. I mean, I guess everyone's going to get their time. And so that's really what it is. It's like, I believe a lot of us will be have learned off the mistakes that we've been seeing in the reality. And then when it's our time to expand, we'll know exactly what not to do with the energy. And so, yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, another one I've got, it's sort of interrelated. It's to do with my dreams. And I've been able to not recall dreams, but I've always had the ability to go back into dreams. Many, many different varying dreams. I can pick a dream up. I'll probably go to sleep tonight and I'll pick a dream up from 20 years ago. But I'll still remember that dream as vividly as I did then and carry on with the story. Now, is this all interrelated, do you think, Sevan?
Well, it depends on the dream and the circumstances that took place when you were having the dream. Because like that's why we kind of lay it out. You have to really be able to read the dream based on the symbols that you're seeing in it and how your mind has interpreted what those symbols mean. For instance, if it's let's say for instance it's a particular person, their name is Carol, but it's wanting to show you something with the letters just CAROL or something like this. Whatever you've attached it to, you'll see in the dream. So there's basically, if you have these dreams that are standing out and you see them in your mind or you remember them crisply, very crisp, then there tends to be some symbolism connected to them that has something to do with the past. But I don't want to sound like a psychic reader over here about dreams and things. Just to understand, that's why we gauge the lucid sleep and levels, because the dream world is very expansive, and even the mental planes that you enter when in psychedelics is very expansive. But it doesn't mean, like you were saying, that you can bring any of that back into this reality, because the mind has a hard time converting it into the geometry of this reality. However, the adept is capable of basically, like a computer has to do, it has to encrypt.
Yeah, I didn't get most of that, Sevan, to be honest.
Okay. Well, I was speaking again of how the information has to be encrypted and packed up the proper way before it can get into a physical reality. I'm not sure if you heard that.
So we're on about the unpackaging again, Savannah.
I'm just having a little trouble hearing, but yeah, what I'm saying is that when you bring something, when you're in any of these planes, and if it's something that is actually worth it, something that has something to do with truth, then you can actually, it gets converted into something that can be carried into 3D, or else it stays into the mental plane and into these astral planes where it's just basically another story running. Because you notice how the mind doesn't have a limitation of what it can cook up in the dream. So it's basically like it can respond based on what you're thinking right before you're thinking it. So from that level, you can go to an immense, like a whole book. If you could write it down, it'd be like a whole book of you just wandering through like the game Myst. So the reality is, is there a tool? Is there something that you use there that you can use there that has a connection with what's going on here? And of course, that's when you get into the advanced stages of lucid dream, where you go there to receive the information, and then you know how to translate it back into this reality. And most of the time, again, this kind of information is not like what people think. Sometimes people are looking for lottery numbers and things like that. It has nothing to do with that. It comes into more feeling. It's not necessarily written data. It's like when you come out of a dream, you're carrying that feeling with you. So don't think that it's like gone. Like when you were in that place, when you woke up, you're actually on that frequency still. Now, of course, that leads us all to the major thing, which is how do you stay there?
Well, the thing is with staying there, this is another bizarre thing. If I'm in the zone in that dream, Savannah, even if I get up to the toilet first thing in the morning, early in the morning, whatever, I can climb back into bed and go and pick up the dream exactly where I just left off.
Exactly.
And carry on the story.
Exactly. Like I said, there's just more to do with the dream. Like it's all the dream in itself is like we were talking about before. It's like the UFO. I'm not sure if you're lucid in there or not, but there is an intention. And then when you say, "Look, I want to know that. I want to access that," then it responds back. That's just all it really does. So that's why you kind of have to have it's like you approach something, but you have to have the question in order to get the answer. So it's the same thing with these expansive fields. You need to know what you want in order to get it. It's not going to necessarily act out on you.
Yeah. All right, great stuff. That's brilliant. That's really cleared a lot for me, that has, Sevan. But I thought the two were interrelated, and I just couldn't work out why I'd got a free pass to get out there and why I can jump around in my dreams as I do.
But yeah, I mean, it was still...
That's answered a lot, Sevan. Thank you very much, man.
No doubt.
Thank you, Tony, for calling in. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Bye now.
Yeah, I think we've got a few more callers in. I don't think we'll be able to take any more tonight, though. But...
Hi.
Hi.
And your name and location?
Angelique, United States.
Hi, Angelique. Greetings from UK. You have a question for Sevan?
Yes. I wanted to know if you're a person, like you're talking about having dreams and being able to recall your dreams and being able to do things with your dreams. But if you're a person who if you have prophetic dreams, so you're not a person who dreams often, and if you do dream, you don't remember it. But when you do, something always follows it, like a life change or something like that, with someone close, or yourself. How do you handle that same thing with people who dream a lot? If you're only a person who only dreams like once or twice a year where you remember, how do you basically do the same process as everybody else?
Okay, so are you just asking directly how could you have better dream recall, or are you asking me about as far as the status of just having only 2 dreams? I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question well.
I don't dream, and when I do remember or have a dream, it's always following some event. Okay, well, first of all, I had to get to the root of these astral sagas going on, having these dreams, like even sometimes when you've had the dream and then, there's just all this stuff going on. There's individuals that you do certain things with them. And I started wanting to track down, where all this was really taking place. I would definitely say that what you're engaging in with everyone every day there's a connection, especially if you're physically around that person or if you've ever been physically around them. There's a connection or a tie that you have to them. And so if you can see, it's almost like with these tentacles or dreadlocks, that something looks like that, with all these connections to different people's minds that we know and that we're connected to one way or another. And some people want to see maybe how this happens also. It's like when you rub your hand on someone, there are now thousands of millions of your DNA on top of them. And these DNAs are now like antennas, but they correspond back to you. So it's almost like they still have your essence on them. And because this stuff really more has to do with the etheric plane, then it connects right into why there's seemed to be a synonymous dream field running. So that's the first part of just understanding why certain people interact in your dream. But overall, because you'll notice that the frequency with everything is going to play a heavy key. If you see certain individuals in the dream that that are associated with lower frequencies, you can automatically assume at that point that it's something also connected to your frequency to be able to see that. So let's just say what that is, because I've gone through different levels of my dreaming. And what I've noticed is that depending on my energy levels, it kind of governed who I dream with and what state they were in. And to a point where I was able to isolate it, that when I was on certain frequencies, I was seeing certain people because those people correspond more to those frequencies. While in another state, I would, be able to see some other people. So what you also have to see with the dreaming and not dreaming that much, but then when you do have a dream, then, you can remember that dream and it's crisp, is that just with everyone, there is a constant knocking from the other side of your consciousness saying, hey, wake up, wake up, wake up. So every now and then, when the stars are right, I say the lineups according to your astrological positioning, there's like a clear pipeline for you. And so if you just so happen to find yourself in a position where you didn't have all these low draining things happen before you go to sleep, then boom, what occurs is a dream that you can actually remember, which is crystal clear. So basically at one point things lined up, everything was right for you, bam, you dreamed, you remembered it, then most of the time you don't at all. Now, the most of the time, don't at all is very it's very imperative to look at a lot of the how can I put it? To look at a lot of the different things that you're taking in. Like it's all about the filters. So if you can't see the dreams, especially after writing, if you're only having two, I guess there's not much to write down. But they always say to start out by writing just small things or just anything. But even if you can't recall that or even recall having a dream at all, it's definitely a filter situation. And then this is where you got to go into the internal cleansing. And of course, we have internal cleansing kits on the site, but you can also see what the entire thing is about. You can get the manual, and then you can even find places that you can do it yourself or things off the internet. Just you have to make sure you do it in the right order. But
I'm not sure
some whole music.
where that's coming from.
So yeah, but that's what you're.
Commercial.
Yeah, we're going to commercial.
Okay.
We don't have it.
I muted you guys. Then the commercial comes on and it's not muted. So.
Okay.
Sorry about it.
No problem.
But that's what you're looking at for sure. Like it's definitely the filters. Everything that has to do with sight. Like if I can't see it, it has to do with one of the filters being clogged. The filters are the organs. And it is very easy to isolate why they're clogged. It's almost important for us to just admit that they're clogged before we start saying, well, how did that get clogged? Because it's just like a car. If you don't change the filter in 2 years, 3 years, you can expect for that filter to be dirty, if not, almost gone out of there. And it's the same thing with the body. The organs were generally flush by the flora and fauna that we grew up around. But now that we don't have any of that in our lives, and also even the essences that we grew up around help propel us. Let me explain that also. A lot of the flora and fauna were trees and things that we would eat that would help propel our astral body. And the reason is because if you notice with the aura also has to be healthy. If you see if you can see auras, if you see like a ghost, like gaseous, like what you would see on a hot road type aura around a person that's only about 4 or 5 inches thick, and you don't see any colors, this is the sign of an individual that has basically no ground. They have no soil that their spirit is actually growing in. And becomes with those individuals a very extreme loss of identity, and they also have a ability to pick up with any kind of knowledge. So where the root to where that comes from, though, is there's ways to cure that. Like I think we should talk about that just for a moment. Like you have to see where there's correspondence in the physical reality to things that can help your aura. And because your aura has a lot to do with colors, you'll find that certain crystals, especially just the regular chakra crystals, help you balance or magnetically buffer, because crystals have a magnetic field on them, magnetically buffer those chakras, which allow them to repair themselves. That's basically just the whole gambit of how you can increase sight if your filter is clogged. Is first physically clean it so that way it doesn't have the same problem again, and then after that magnetically buffer it. Find the crystal that corresponds to the chakra, and then you'll experience no problems within it.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Angelique.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye. We also have question. I think we can have one more caller, Sevan. Yeah, is that right?
Yeah. I got 5 minutes. No, I'm joking.
Is question on the line? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hi. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Am I coming through? Okay.
You're coming through loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay. Well, my question, I'll get to it. And it won't take very long to say it. But basically, about 6 years ago, I basically decided, I was about 20 years old, and decided that I would try to advance myself spiritually, or try to kind of awaken. And without going into all the details, many things went wrong with that decision, and I experienced extreme trauma of a magical and spiritual nature. And as a result, I was diagnosed with a mental illness and put on a number of drugs. And where I am now is I'm at peace with being on these drugs, at least temporarily. But one of them in particular is often diagnosed for bad dreams. And I was put on this because at one point for 2 months straight, I had the same dream over again. And so basically, I've had a horrible time with nightmares, but I found that lucid dreaming is always something I've wanted to pursue. But this medication, its action is specifically that it represses stress hormones and it represses anxiety responses to things in dreams, and it seems to have the effect of keeping me from having any vividness to my dreams. So basically, what I'm wondering is, like, medications like that, is there any negative effect to the spiritual or dreaming body from long-term use of them?
Well, overall, anytime that, it's really simple to understand, especially with the spirit body, because, it's when you go into a field and you can tell the energy that's there and that's resident there, then if it's wholesome energy, like what you would associate with, like, let's say milk and cheese or abundance, then it equals one thing. And then if it's vampiric energy or like a vacuum, then it equals degradation. So from those 2 points, that's pretty much how you determine if the dream field is becoming harmful for your spirit body. Now, of course, in any state that the spirit is not growing, whether it's from, knowledge, wisdom, or, essence, etc., then it's going to find itself in trouble. So what I've learned in all of this, because this is an ailment that it just start plaguing us. Like, we've been throughout history really trying to cure our ailments. And of course, this is why most people went to the one who carried the double-twined serpent, or the Asclepius, which is also Azazel, or the god of the forest, because of the knowledge of the trees and how to cure things. But there was, of course, a lot of deceit and trickery from that level. So where it really left us is one group of people don't like to dig into any more about how we're going to figure out how we're going to cure problems through using nature, while the same people with the double-twined serpent Asclepius sign are now into what they wanted to do anyway, which is pharmacy and chemistry, and making these drugs that actually inhibit a lot of the chakra centers. So what I would say definitely is that you have to still see it boils down to vibratory frequency, how you can increase the oscillation and balance out the oscillation in the body, which is really where all ailments come from. Because, of course, all ailments in the past and in history were associated and diagnosed as a spiritual situation.
I think someone needs to mute their thing.
Yeah. Angelique, would you like to can you mute your line, please?
Okay.
Could you mute your line? We're getting some feedback coming through.
That's not my line.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. But again, we have to see that all ailments are due to the imbalance of the body, and how to fix the imbalance of the body is to understand where it's off balance at. There's several different ways that we can really go at this, but if you've already tried it spiritually and you've tried it mentally and you don't seem to be getting much result, go physical. Because when you're becoming primarily physical, even all the desires still boil down to something physical or something you want in the physical. That means that there's been a heavy imbalance within the physical body, and it must be put in check. Once that, and it's put in check because the physical body moves at a certain vibratory frequency when it moves in as prime, meaning that the only way that the physical body can move into prime is if then all the vehicles start to oscillate at the same degree as the frequency of the body. So in order to break free of that and to release yourself from what the body has degraded itself into at any point, and then move to a point where you can actually regenerate it. We're not talking about abandoning the body. We're talking about actually regenerating it, but not from the perspective of being inside of it. But to accomplish that, you have to get onto another vibratory frequency. Let me tell you also why. When you move into other higher vibratory frequencies, the lower frequencies that may have attached themselves, also known as shells, break off. And all of the diseases, this was always diagnosed, as I was saying before we were cut off earlier, all diseases were diagnosed as infirmities caused by spiritual forms, dismembered or imperfect spiritual forms, premature spiritual forms. So to vibrate into a frequency which teaches them, it doesn't actually, if some people say, oh, well, what are you doing? You're killing it or whatever, for those who know about this kind of knowledge. But the reality is that there is a teaching or showing of perfection. And so this is also what allows an individual that is walking through a very low vibratory field to still be able to shine and hold their full spectrum light, because they understand the keys to how to keep the vehicle balanced no matter where they are. And of course, how this acts out in the reality is not allowing things to change your vibration. But once you've been overcome, because there's a before state to this and there's an after state. Once you've been overcome, or your armaments have been overrun, you have no choice but then to pull out something like the panuncia, meaning the energy that can cure all things. That energy, of course, is contained within. It's not a stone. It's not in the physical reality. And it's accessed in a vibratory frequency that is balanced. How to obtain that, from what I'm seeing now, is by understanding these bioenergetics. That's one status. The second status is the consumption. There's a heavy level of the consumption of what we're actually eating. The consumption. The heavy level of what we're taking into the body.
I'm busy.
Okay. So I guess there's some other people online. So I guess that's.
Sorry,
I just
had to tell something to my roommate. That's all.
Okay. But that's what I'm saying. So it's basically starting with that level. Like, I'm like this. I'll just tell you the truth. No matter where you're at and what prison you may think you're in, whether it's Earth or whatever the case may be, never give up on yourself. And as long as you don't give up on yourself, then the solution will come. I tell the world now the solution is here. There are several ways to cause activation. There was never just one way. And the reason was because people were going to get themselves into different things. And some weren't even going to be able to accept certain things a certain way. And so what happens is that what I can do with a couple magnets, I can also do with the Great Hermeticum. I can also do with possibly a Bible. I can also do with different ways. But which way is going to be pure energy? So that's also what the key for a lot of us is that we need to read the fine print sometime. When getting involved with other energies and talking about spiritual expansion, there are ancient ones here. They've already maxed themselves out. Like in the external reality, if we see what's really being practiced here is the rites of the Anunnaki. Their story is that they basically got super external. They went looking for planets in outer space, not inner space. Understand the difference. You check off in a flying shuttle with a bunch of gas blowing all off the back, talking about you're going to go find something. You're going to go find something that acts the same way you do. Everything is inside. And so now that's what I'm saying. The vibratory frequency picks up. Shells break off. They say one side of the body lengthens itself back to the size that it's supposed to be, because one side of your body will become smaller than the other when you start going through deep grieving and ailments. So you'll see when the magnetic poles are corrected, then that side grows back long and the field starts to perfect itself. Then you begin to bloom again, because the original creators had integrity. They built the vehicle to be perpetual. It was just their thing. It had nothing to do with us later on and what we were going to do. It's like when you're the originator of something, your integrity is, let's build this thing. And if you know the secret to it, you can put it all back together again. And so that's also where we play like this Humpty Dumpty on the dimension, trying to find the rest of the pieces to put ourselves back together again. But don't think you're here alone, though. Like, that's why I was saying we're all going to need each other, because each person, that's the other thing. Nobody is really coming forth and talking about what happens in the cabals at time. And it's leading thousands. If you could see the people who are following behind the Justin Biebers and individuals that you wouldn't even think that are involved in this stuff. But it's because nobody that's really been in there is coming back and saying, hey, stay away from that. And that actually becomes a part of their total emancipation. It's because that actually allows them to understand that, look, there are beings here already that have humanity's interest in full mind of expansion, but there's going to be nothing done that we don't do ourselves. Meaning that some people always ask, well, where are the benevolent beings going to help us? First of all, where would they get a vehicle to get into 3D if everyone here is already acting a fool? They can't go and just act a fool. They say even some did, but that's the reality. What I'm telling you, that it comes from us. There's no other place out there, but there's more than enough here. And that's what I think that's the most jubilant thing to really be able to say to anyone, is that all diseases, all ailments, all infirmities can be cured with the knowledge that is here on this planet. The only thing you need is your will. And that's what we wrestle with every day, is something trying to break our will and take our frequencies.
this somehow will strengthen us. Like we've been going through this a lot. We are more stronger in numbers when we're experiencing things. Many people have seen the resistance as a shield when they had to seek refuge from horrible, angry gods. Just to get a moment in space in their mind where they don't feel like they're in some type of conviction and there's some timeline that they already missed. You see what I mean? Like there's real things going on down here, but you can tell in yourself what's right. And that's what I was saying. The core of each human, you can see in many cases is good. But what we get into at times, what was a child supposed to do? So that's why many of us that that's why we work in these groups, because many of us that are more weathered or have spiritual connection. I believe that a lot of the melanin dominant people do have a spiritual connection with other beings on the timeline that some of these ghost beings that are running around fear. So there's this whole other little dynamic going on with when a person that carries a lot of energy can activate and then actually show individuals that they're supposed to be doing. But guess what? It works for us and against us. Because you see those same melanin dominant individuals run around the stage rapping about all sorts of stuff, and then everyone is following that. Yeah. So that's what I was saying about all energies. You can still see the same thing with the Caucasian race or whatever, that with all energies, they can either choose to use this fantastic ability, whether it's bravery or smeltering or cultures or whatever, they can choose to use it for our friend or for our foe. And now, it's our turn up for bat. Now we're going to see exactly what we can do with it. And I think the first place to start is with healing each other. Right. And what I do right now is I give you the knowledge. Like I said, this bioenergetics, it took me 6 years to get to this. I've been over every mountain and molehill. I've been to every single planet in this solar system, even ones that you don't even know about. I've seen strange geometry and obtuse shapes, still holding the shield, meaning still being able to keep my mind from getting taken. Because that's what everyone that's really been in spirituality understands, that only thing that every experience that you're coming into is trying to do is say that it's the greatest experience. If you can just hold on for a moment and wait for the next experience, you'll see that it's really not. Every elevator you get off of, someone was like, I'm God here. Like, okay, that's the same thing the guy said. on the step on the elevator. So either you guys are in the same club or, I'm hitting the same dimensions, but you have to be like that with it. You can't let them take that flair away from you and make you like this robot where, yes, I will do it. That's what we have to break out of, but Go ahead.
Well, so many religions, even pagan religions, seem to be based on the idea that our ancestors said God went this far, and this is how far they could go, and so now we're going to only go that far.
Right. Well, and then the other thing is which ancestor? Like, I get specific. Like, who are we talking about? Are we talking about Orion again? Like, that's what I'm saying. The last stop on the bus, all roads lead to Rome. And that's what you see in all the religious structure. Every time you get to the end, Nephilim's right there. It's like, what's up, man? I thought I saw you over there. He's like, yeah, we got this whole thing on lock. I keep telling you that. Now, remember, there's not too many people who can go that far. And this was what I believe why some people believe that, again, that the Caucasian race is like, that they're worse and they don't know how that we have problems with them, etc. They're looking at it all wrong. Some of them have went into the darkness and have not found the light and actually have to have a melanin dominant individual go in and bring the light to them and pull them out, and along with the rest of the individuals that are in there. But why? Because they went through it before on the timeline, and that's the secret to Lower Egypt.
Does it work the other way around as well, though, Sevan?
It oscillates, because if you notice, it all oscillates around Egypt. It's the in and exit, exit. You come back, first of all, dark-skinned melanin black man. A couple aeons later, you're Santa Claus. Same thing, though. It's not. That's why when you look into the soul, you see the same thing. It's just weathered over time. Look at Dr. Parnassus' Imaginarium. It's just you see the over time, the one who is in this great struggle, who doesn't have a home, i.e., Cain, is weathered from dealing with nature and the elements, i.e., all the indigenous and the animals, and had to become the hunter to tame some of the beasts that were actually eating his children. And then his passion of, as a brother said, that anger. There's some type of understanding. You got to understand it, right? That's, you got to talk to the other guy. He doesn't seem to understand why someone would ransack and pillage their shores. But
to heal the planet and to heal the human family, I've always believed that was our responsibility.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of responsibilities that we have.
See, notice how even the Western world was set up to get rid of our responsibilities. All we did was when we set up the Western world or United States, we just brought in a bunch of immigrants in order to do the work that we used to do, which was the farming. So there's this passing the buck, literally, thing that everyone is encouraged to do here. But I started noticing that this is probably why your world is upside down when you leave this world. It's like if you do too much of one thing in this world, then you just get the opposite in the next time. So if you go out of here balanced, you go into the next one balanced. It's trajectory. That's all you have to see it as. When you get ready to leave, you're going through the wormhole. Now, everything about that tells you need to be lined up right. That's why anytime you're dealing with spaceships, they don't take off until the coordinates and everything are set just perfectly. So if you die basically without your coordinates and everything set perfectly, you're going to spiral into another dimension of imperfection. It's even easier for me to see it from that point. And then again, coming into the world, you're favoring one hand, mainly the right. The world itself is on 23-degree tilt. People seem to be off balance, more masculated. But in the darkness, meaning the hidden or the left, there's a matriarch or a feminine. It operates on a reptilian hive mind or a moon-like nature. So there's, again, you can map all this stuff out. I wish somebody would write a book about it. If I could sit down long enough, I can write the entire book of what the story is. But can you write the story outside of the story? Because that's where your mind comes, because once you learn all this, and it's of course called the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, by the way. If you want to understand where this works in the occult, it's the people who wanted to know the truth and all of that, they needed to know this knowledge. So they had to go through all these experiences until they get to the conclusion of all the knowledge. So why we're now at this almost point where we seem to be at the conclusion of knowledge, what is that conclusion telling us? All is self. If we see it any other kind of way, then we create this external being, and sometimes it can terrorize the hell out of us. Yeah, it becomes the Gregor of all of everything that we don't want to be seen and that we really hate and what we don't desire. And this was how it started. That's what I was telling you. In the Old Testament, you see that even that there's a ritual taking place where the people were to place the sins on the horns of the goat and let it off into the forest. But notice what's being said. This means that this goat is supposed to be bearing the sins of the people. This is no different than Christianity, where obviously the goat God again, he's to bear everyone's sins, Jesus of the world, and then boom again. Now then you go into another religion. Now it's the Kaaba, it's a cube. Now it's going to bear the sins of everyone if they march around it 7 times, and then everything is going to be absolved. But our sins are making it blacker. It's the same thing, that we're feeding our responsibility to something else. And we're feeding our responsibilities not when they're solved, but when they're at their worst state. And that's when you get the root to a prison religion, meaning a religion or something that you start to believe in when you're in prison in the most desperate moment. Not when you have your head clear, you've ate some grapes, everything's cool, and you say, bring it to me. let me dissect then. No, they're trying to bring it to you right when something's breathing down your throat and you're facing what you think is the end of your life. Hey, would you give your life over? You see, yeah. You see, they're playing this game with everyone, and that's why I had to get so far beyond that.
I've experienced that my whole life.
Yeah, I mean, I know, sister. I know exactly where you're at. I mean, to tell you the truth, that's why it's the end of it. That's what I keep saying with this. It's so nobody can really grasp it unless they've been through it. But once you've been through it, then you're like, okay, I know what it's the end of. But the sleepers won't really know what it's the end of until they awake and start seeing that go ahead.
One of the hardest things for me to realize is that it's not just Christian God that does that. Pagan gods do it too. Oh no, I've messed up my life. And then someone shows up hey, here's the pagan god. He'll solve everything. And I learned the hard way that that's never the case.
Yeah, I mean, because it's still the same entities rolled into another system. And in fact, that is really what came to this world, is the exact same group of beings, but still creating different belief systems and back there doing the controlling. And again, just as if you follow Dan Winter's work, he talks about what is it really back there, and it's just that these version of the ancestors are very vampiric, and they don't have any other way to continue their idea of themselves except for attaching and latching a hold to other individuals. And I think you see things like that in the bottom of the sea. And so if we actually want to see if it's actually going on in our planet, the ocean will show us that there's many other life forms that we have yet to really, with large brains, by the way, that we've yet to really encounter. We just have to know, okay, I've seen enough of the bottom of the ocean floor to know what direction is going to get me where I need to go. And I think that lesson in itself, which is like fire, is very painful but very valuable, and teaches a person very fast and in a way that they don't have to learn that same lesson again. And to me in life, that may be in certain cases the only thing that allowed me to put some of the things behind me that I've experienced in this realm. But you know, realistically, the other thing is to be active at all times at making sure people get the wholeness, but in another way. Like as far as I could go into talking to them about the Airbot and how this whole thing is configured on a Sephiroth of Adam Cadman, and the dog god is running around acting like he doesn't have, that he's not trained. But these days that doesn't make any sense. And I think 2,000 years ago that was kind of like how everyone talked. Now they're talking about the magnetic field that is not spiraling properly, and thus the negative pole is duplicated itself. So you need to put a positive and a negative pole in the entry and the exit, and this will allow you to oscillate outside of your outside of your normal frequency range, which will cause most of the negative entities to drop off, and then you'll get a clear mind and you can see exactly what you need to do next. And I think that now you ask yourself, which one was better? Because they're actually the same thing. This is what you have to see, that in each time that we've cranked this old machine up and started running Earth again, 1.0, 1.2, it was still the same story played in the background. It was just the characters were painted up different. And so that's what I see throughout history, is that, you know, our same situation, and that's why I've been able to nip it in the bud. It's what we're doing, and mainly what you take in, because before you take anything in, if anything intrudes on you, that's the actual point right there. And so like I watch what I put in all my holes, my mouth, my nose, my ears, those are entry points. People talking to you, you smelling things, and then someone putting their tongue in your mouth or whatever. What I'm saying is that you're guard your gates. And as they raise up your gates, put your guards up and let them be there. And again, don't fail to utilize the crystal kingdom if necessary. That's the other thing. The crystals, in many cases, hold the actual frequencies. Like I know that also crystals kind of get tied into the Wiccan thing at times too, especially when people are putting in negative intention into crystals. We have to just see it for what it is. They're magnetic buffers. So when you put them on the corresponding color of the chakra, it makes the wheel kick up so that it can throw off some of the infection and some of the bacteria, etc., that's holding it back astral hygienically. And so that gets things back on the road. And so that's what's up. Hopefully everyone got as much as they can out of the conversation. I know there was a couple interruptions, but all in all, I think that we did very well. Of course, I'll be coming forward again and talking about some stuff that's a lot more put together and organized. I'm always just expanding so much into new stuff. It's no time to even go back over the stuff that was like a week or 2 weeks ago. Like we made the entire run this year and a half or 2 years, what I've seen is a full occultation from the time that we began till all where I was just basically dealing with the reptile then, and just, you know, trying to flush out his identity and the reality all the way up until the point where all is self. And I think that that's pretty much the entire route that a person would be running here on the planet, however long it would take them. And so now what we want to do is just get people from that beginning point, wherever the beginning is to them, right to the conclusion of this. And again, it's vibratory frequency.
That's right. Thank you very much, Sevan. I know that you've got another show in an hour or so. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's about an hour and a half. Hour and 10 minutes.
Do you want to give everyone details for that show?
Actually,
so they can tune in.
Actually, they can go and visit the site. I didn't write the link down because I had to put it on a tiny URL because it was kind of long. So if you go to the site, you actually see the flyer for this show, and it was a double header, so I put in the information for the other show right in.
That's right.
With that flyer. And so, yeah, they can check me out in about, I guess, 2 hours. Yeah, it's about 2 hours and 10 minutes. And I'll be on again. I'll refresh myself, and then I got to get a little bit more into exactly how to unpin the lower world or the inorganic kingdom set up by Yaldabaoth. But that's, you know, another story.
Okay, thank you very much, all you callers, and thank you, Sevan,
Thank you very much,
once
Sevan.
again. As Rosalie said, the next time you come on, if you could have a question and answer,
I think it would definitely just have to be a session
for that in itself, isn't it?
Yeah. Because there's lots of callers out there who want to ask.
And we apologise for all those who couldn't get who couldn't call in. for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
You know, Sevan's got a lot of knowledge which is shared with us anyway, and I'm sure some of the questions have been answered by Sevan.
Yeah, give thanks to that.
Much callers, and this is the Inner Vibe Show on
the
Sunday
Essence
evening on Essence Radio.
Yeah.
We have Mr. Lee coming on shortly, so please tune in.